Hello, everyone. Yeah. We are live on YouTube. We're having some technical issues, but let's hope this works. Hello, hello.
Yeah.
Hello, hello. All right, we're going to bring Nicole out. Okay. Hello, hello. Sorry, everyone. We've had some technical difficulties tonight. Thanks for joining us for our Manifest Law live stream. I am not an immigration attorney, but we're going to have Nicole Gennara, our principal immigration attorney, join us now. Thanks, Nicole.
Hi, everyone. I know it's not exactly like the greatest of news, but here today to really talk about how this can impact a lot of you. The live stream just occurred a few minutes ago. We're still waiting for the actual executive actions to be published. So we're going to wait a few minutes for more people to join the particular stream, but hopefully we're going to try to get as many answers to your questions as possible, give you guys the latest of updates as it happens in real time. Gentle reminder that any questions that are put onto the chat are going to be public. So any confidential information and any personal information should not really be shared on this particular chat. Another thing that I will also mention is that the answers to the questions that I have here or anything that you guys comment or anything I say is not specific legal advice. I'm not here to establish an attorney-client relationship with you. So anything that's specific to your particular circumstances or anything that's much more detailed that is specific to your particular scenario is something that might be more fruitful or really way more better for a consultation. So as like the questions come in, I'm going to do my best to answer them. And even if people have repeated questions, it's because you're joining later. I'm more than happy to answer it. So one of the first questions that has come in is, does it impact existing H-1 visa holders? So let's take a step back right now in terms of like what the news is that the government has decided to propose a potential $100,000 fee for H-1Bs. Quietly, in addition to that, there seems to be some level of instruction to the Department of Labor in order to increase the prevailing wages. I want to let you know that when it comes to the increase of the prevailing wages, this is not the first time that we have seen this under Trump 1.0. If many of you have remembered, the wage levels were increased before, and it is possible that it can increase again. But when it comes to that big stellar news of the $100,000 fee, we only know as much as the government has let us know so far through the Bloomberg reports and also on top of that, the actual live stream announcement. So when it comes to the question of does it impact existing H-1 visa holders, it can when you are seeking a renewal. According to this statement from the White House through the officials that were on that live stream, they did mention, I think on 1 hour, 37 minutes into that stream, they mentioned that, hey, this is going to impact renewals. These are going to impact extensions and first-time applicants. It is unclear how it's going to be rolled out. The one thing that I want to really mention is that likely this will go through a rule-making process where the government must submit a proposal onto the Federal Register for notice and comment period. So it isn't necessarily going to be a direct and immediate change. It will take time for the government to receive those comments and for it to be implemented. And that's where we're kind of missing a little bit of the loop, is how this is going to be implemented. In terms of the question of my H-1B visa extension is in progress, will this impact? At the end of the day, historically, these have not had retroactive impacts when it comes to new actions. It is unlikely I can see a pathway for someone to be retroactively charged this fee. So if you are pending at the moment, I would like to think that it's going to be concluded without that $100,000 application fee. And also one of the things that should be noted is that it's not even clear how it's going to be rolled out, if it's an annual basis, on a per applicant basis, or company-wide. The only reason why it's a little bit confusing is because when they mentioned annual basis, they were not clear on how that ties to how H-1B renewals are not necessarily on an annual basis. Right? Yeah, so that kind of targets your question. Is it $100K per employer or per employee? The government hasn't really said. There was a lot of statements related to a per applicant basis, especially considering that they were saying that this is going to impact renewals, extensions, and first-time applicants. I don't think we will really know until either the proclamation or the executive action is published and it states exactly how they want to roll it out, or B, when this proposal gets submitted to the Federal Register for notice and comment period. Can you also tell us about the gold card? Is it 1 million for individuals? Actually, I'm going to tell you guys right now, the Trump administration actually published a gold card website. If you Google Trump gold card right now, there should be trumpgoldcard.gov. It would give you a little bit more details than we know. But what I will know so far is that it is $1 million, it seems, for individuals in order to apply for the gold card. And there is some sort of platinum card version of it. As well. The insinuation is that this is some sort of hyperspeed or accelerated pathway towards a green card. I would surmise that it could be very similar to the EB-5 program, where source of funds is going to be a question that would need to be answered in order to qualify for it. But there isn't really the most amount of information. We got to wait until the executive actions are signed. I see that the gold proclamation is out. Thank you for that. Can somebody pull it up, please? Okay, so the gold card executive order, we're going to real-time review this, guys. So can somebody please pull it up right now? The gold card proclamation. So let's talk about H-1B cap gap in universities. So I'm not sure if you mean like cap exempt, but if you're talking about cap gap, the $100,000 fee doesn't explicitly talk about the cap gap. It's for individuals who are interested in applying for an H-1B. It seems to be the target, not necessarily the cap gap example. Sorry, guys, my team is trying to pull up the proclamation in real time at the moment. All right. Okay, let's see here. Trump gold card executive order. So we're going to review it as quickly as we can while I'm doing this live stream, while answering the question, right? Let's see here. Is it applied? So will it impact existing valid H-1B time period? The $100,000 fee seems to be focused on extensions, renewals, and first-time applicants. It seems that it may be application-centered. But again, we do not have the details of the proclamation. We also don't have the details of how this is going to be rolled out. As a reminder to everybody here, it is likely that this will need to go through a rule-making process where the relevant agencies, specifically DHS here in the scenario, would need to propose how they see these things being put into place, and a notice and comment period will need to occur, right? For those of you who are talking about cap exempt, there was no specific discussion on how cap exempt was going to be applied here. What it seems to be is a general discussion of H-1Bs, and H-1Bs also include those cap exempt entities. It is possible that there could be exceptions to this as the rulemaking occurs, but we will need to wait until the proposal or potentially the proclamation to see how this could be applied. The green card numbers is from EB1 and NIW. Not sure what you were talking about for the R. Oh, I see here. That's what you mean. It's the same comment. It seems that the green cards are going to be tied to the EB categories. I'm wondering if this is going to be a direct replacement for the EB5. It seems here. Let's see here. They're using terms like exceptional. So I'm wondering if this is going to fall under EB2 potentially. Would the Secretary say to establish a gold card program that's authorizing an alien an unrestricted gift to the Department of Commerce? Oh, it's a gift. The requisite gift amount shall be $1 million for an individual donating on his own behalf, or $2 million for a corporation or entity donating on behalf of an individual. In adjudicating visa applications, the Secretary of State, as evidence of eligibility of exceptional business ability and national benefit, and eligibility for national interest waiver. Oh, it does seem that they're tying this to the EB2 category. Wow. Implementation, specify the date of which applicants may begin to submit, establish administrative fees, establish a process for a gold card holder. So yeah, I'm starting to think that this is going to be tied to EB2, guys. I see here, I don't believe the gold card is a stable or serious policy since it was enacted through an executive order. The next administration could revoke it, leaving out after the election. You know, I think it just depends on who's going to be in the next administration. It's hard to say immediately if it's going to really break down. I think one of the things that you should consider, rather than focusing on the specific executive order, is what does this mean for the immigration system as a whole? For a lot of you who are approaching the United States or being in the United States, I think it's about focusing on categories that might be a little bit more stable right now compared to like the H-1B and the like. It seems that the government is trying their best to make initiatives that focus a lot on extraordinary ability, rewarding exceptional ability, or individuals who are in entrepreneurial pathways that are going to generate jobs. That's what I would take out of this, rather than specifically, hey, should I be going into the gold card program, yes or no? It's what are the alternative pathways that I need to figure out that seems to be the most rewarded, whether it's under the current administration or whatever the potential administration will become. Right. So I see here, how about existing H-1B holders? So Toga, I did mention this on a previous answer, but I'm more than happy to repeat it for those of you who are joining. Essentially, the way that it seems that it could potentially impact H-1B holders that already have it is during the renewal process or the extension process. During the live stream, the government at about 1 hour and 37 minutes specifically stated that it would apply for individuals who are seeking to renew or extensions. However, I really want to emphasize that concept of will, right? The reality is that there is a likelihood that this would need to go through a rulemaking process where the government provides a proposal of some format to explain how that they're going to be implementing this and how it will be rolled out. There will be a notice and comment period in all likelihood where people can provide counter arguments or for arguments, and the government will roll out their implementation based on those comments and feedback. Next question is, will it be challenged in court? That is a good question, especially when you're going through a rulemaking process. There are many opportunities for individuals to try to challenge this in court, whether it's because of an APA process or the question regarding whether or not this is going to be something that is reasonable. When it comes to the how executive orders and executive actions are rolled out, at the end of the day, fees do need to cover certain types of costs. There needs to be a reason for why these things are being rolled out. And I think that that leaves a lot of opportunity for potentially lawsuits, injunctions, and the like. This is something that is definitely, I wouldn't say it's like out of the blue, but the reality is that it is very, very different, something that I don't think a lot of us were expecting immediately to this scale, right? How is it a fast track when EB2 is backlogged? That is a real question. What I'm trying to say is that it seems that the government is perceiving that it would be a fast track, but maybe it could be a fast track for the rest of the world. But we won't know until we really know. I am trying to review this proclamation. It doesn't explicitly say that it's going to be under EB2. It's just that a lot of the language that is being provided here ties itself to exceptional business ability, exceptional being the standard usually applied under EB2. For exceptional ability, and then national interest waiver, which NIWs are under the EB2. Perhaps what they mean by an accelerated program is the fact that you can skip the labor certification process, is what I'm judging from this particular order, and you can file an I-140 immediately. Let's see here, continuing on to the questions, right? Some people are saying that they do not understand the platinum card. If you go to the government website, there's a little bit of a explanation of what it is, but I think what I will say is that maybe it's referencing this $2 million version of it, where a company or an entity is submitting it on behalf of somebody else. But at the moment, let's see if we can pull up the website right now. So Trump Gold Card, I think .gov, right? Or trumpcard.gov, sorry guys, right? It says here that, yeah, there's a platinum card for processing fees and after DHS vetting, a $5 million contribution. You will have the ability to spend up to 270 days in the United States without being subjected to US taxes on non-US income. Wow, that's interesting. So now we're looking at tax benefits here for individuals who are seeking the Trump Platinum card. But it says coming soon at the moment, so I don't know if this is. I don't think this is going to be part of this particular initiative, but it seems to be like the next stage of it. How long will it take for rulemaking process? It depends, but usually speaking, I would say that it could be as quick as a few months, or it could be about a year. It really just depends. I don't know how prepared the agencies are or the related stakeholders are for submitting these proposals, but we shall see. When it comes to 100K fee per petition, or is it 100K fee per employee? Hard to say. It seems like there could be some sort of, I wouldn't even say it's like a contradiction. It's that the statements that were made during this live stream were a little bit unclear. It's hard to say if this is going to be done on a per application basis, but there were references to it for renewals, for first time applicants, for extensions. Those seem to be on a per applicant basis. However, there's this discussion of an annual fee, or this being an annual fee, which makes it come across as if it's a per, let's call it company basis. And I see here, it looks like there is a company-wide exemption. I would like to hear what you say about that, or where you found out about that. For any of you that are tracking the proclamations, and if they're dropping in real time, it would be nice to be shared if those things are actually happening. So if anybody sees that it drops, I'm more than happy to give you guys feedback at real time. Going back into it, let's see here. Okay, I see here restriction on entry of certain non-immigrant workers. So I'm seeing here the STEM stuff. I think the H-1B proclamation just dropped, right? So let me read it through quickly. I'm going to see if I can try to get you guys some answers. For those of you who are wondering if I am happy or sad, at the moment right now, I think we just need more information. I would like to tell a lot of people that I think it's shocking, that's for sure. Is it clear whether or not this is something that is going to be good or bad? Kind of depends on how this is going to be rolled out. Let's see here, restrictions. So they're talking a lot about STEM and how information technology firms in particular have quote unquote prominently manipulated the H-1B system. Let's continue this. Accordingly, so they're going to focus on restrictions on entry. Okay, so it's going to be based on entry here. Aliens as non-immigrants to perform services such as under section this is restricted except for those aliens whose petitions are accompanied or supplemented by a payment of $100,000 subject to exceptions as set forth in subsection C of this section. This restriction shall expire absent the extension 12 months after the effective date of this proclamation, which will be on, okay. Oh, okay. So this seems to be focusing on entry. Department of State. The restriction imposed shall not apply to any individual alien, all aliens working for a company, or all aliens working in an industry if the Secretary of Homeland Security determines in the Secretary's discretion that it is of national interest. Okay, so there could be exceptions here if your company or you are doing something that is of national interest and does not pose a threat or security or welfare of the United States. Employers shall, prior to filing an H-1B petition, so it's a singular petition, guys, singular application on behalf of an alien outside of the United States, obtain and retain documentation showing that the payment described in Section 1 of this proclamation has been made. The Secretary of State shall verify receipt of payment of the amount described in Section 1 of this proclamation during the H-1B visa petition process and shall approve only these petitions in which the filing employer has been made the payment described. Okay. Scope and implementation on the restriction of entry pursuant to Section 1 shall apply only to aliens who enter or attempt to enter the United States after the effective date of this proclamation as set forth in 1A. So the effective date of this proclamation, hold please, shall be midnight Eastern Daylight Time on September 21st. All of you guys who are out of the country right now should come back right now if you're on H-1B. That's basically what I'm seeing here. Right. No, they are applied to everyone. Give me 1 second. I understand so International Students 101, I think what I'm trying to say is that it seems that there are listed exceptions here based on the discretion of the Department of State. Okay. Please know, guys, that I'm trying to review this in real time. These things just drop, so I'm trying my best to kind of give you guys some of the answers. Let's see, applies to renewals and new application. That means it's time to go. Okay. Seems like only for those who are entering us on the U.S., not those currently in. Please correct me if I'm wrong. That's what it seems like. It seems that the proclamation is focusing on entries and exits directly with the Department of State for sure. It seems like because the way that they titled this as well, restriction on entry, guys. I'm not going to try to say that this is clever or not, but it's kind of interesting that they decide to go down this pathway because it's something that an executive order can technically control. And I'm wondering if a rulemaking process is going to be a part of this. So people who are already here are in a better circumstance at the moment. I just saw the Oval Office. Like they are going towards renewals and new H-1B applications. That's what it seems like. But I will say, though, it's interesting about the language on the restriction on entry. Hey, guys, come on. Let's kind of keep it very, very, I won't even say light here, but let's keep it civil. For sharing the link, happy to share the link right now and drop it into the chat. Give me 1 second. Right, there is a copy of the proclamation. Everybody, if you guys are watching, we have family and friends who are abroad right now on H-1B and who have H-1B visa stamps. Please tell them that it's probably a good idea to try to come back before the 21st, guys. Right, so this weekend, everybody come back. Right, it's very possible that we might see some injunctions, lawsuits. I bet you there are some white shoe firms right now working overnight at the moment. Okay, let's kind of let's see here. Guys, let's keep it civil. We're not here to talk about politics right now. I think it's just kind of like, let's see here. Do you think that will be legal challenges? I would suspect as such, right? I think that there's going to be a lot of firms out there and there's going to be a lot of companies out there that are going to have some issues with this. But the restriction on entry is an interesting one. Let's see here. What about people who are studying in the US and want to apply for H-1B at one point? It's possible that this is going to impact you guys right now. Although the focus again seems to be restrictions on entry, is that this $100,000 payment is what's going to be triggering whether or not someone can travel on the H-1B. That's the way that I'm thinking about it, or where I'm looking at it at the moment when trying to read this in real time. Because it says here that DHS and DOS shall coordinate to take all necessary and appropriate action to implement this proclamation and to deny entry to the United States any H-1B non-immigrant for whom the prospective employer has not made the payment described in Section 1 of this proclamation, right? So it seems that this payment, I don't think it's going to be optional or not optional, but it seems that the tying of the entry, the travel to the United States is that. No impact to applicants inside the US, but you cannot leave the country otherwise be ready to pay $100K. I think that's the way that I'm interpreting this at this moment. Is this going to affect international students on F1 visa? Where it's going to impact you is when you change into the H-1B and whether or not you want to travel. That's what it looks like at the moment. What do you mean by restriction on entry? Basically, what this proclamation is saying is that unless you have made this $100,000 payment, you cannot enter the United States on an H-1B. That's what it seems to be inferring here. Are people who already have an H-1B, will their employers also have to pay $100K? If you're already on H-1B here in the United States and you're not traveling, that's how I'm interpreting this proclamation right now, is that you don't necessarily need to have the $100K. However, if you are traveling and you're trying to enter after on the 21st is when the government is supposedly going to double check to make sure that this $100,000 payment has been made. I am curious on whether or not the lawsuits or any injunctions are going to say that they needed to go through a rulemaking process in order for these things to occur. Let's see here. Yes, thank you. I appreciate the feedback on giving the real-time analysis. I'm doing the best that I can at the moment. Okay, let's see here. Let's see here. I'm trying to continue looking at some of these answers, right? Or questions. I got my work title approved. I am working towards getting my own visa. Can you share how much manifest law charges for a consultation? So I understand that a lot of people are going to be interested in talking about O1s and the like. Guys, that's going to probably be a considerable alternative, or something that you guys should really be working towards as an alternative at the moment, considering everything that's happening with the H-1B in real time. For those of you who are interested in consultations, Manifest does provide free consultations in certain scenarios. So please go to our website and we're more than happy to talk to you, especially given like these groundbreaking news. One thing that we try to do is to try to really keep abreast of everything. That's the reason why we jumped on this live immediately, because we wanted to be able to explain to you what we're seeing, especially doing the real-time analysis, right? I have my wedding in 1 month in India. Is it advisable? Is it advised to travel in 2 weeks or not? Listen, if you're on an H-1B, according to this proclamation, if you try to come back afterwards, you need to prove that you've paid $100K, right, in order to come in. So I am not really of the opinion that leaving the country is a good idea. It says here on the proclamation that it's going to be effective on the 21st, midnight until the 21st. I would assume that it will impact renewals as well. We would need to wait for U.S. notification. Yeah, I think what I'm most curious about is how USCIS is going to roll this out. I'm also curious about any of the injunctions, filings, things that are going to happen in the next few days, because this seems very, very broad. The entry ban, I think, is something that can definitely be potentially executed. I think it's actually the fee part that I'm a little bit considering at the moment. Like, I'm not really sure how they're going to do this in 2 days. If it's under 2F, doesn't need regulations similar to travel ban. Yeah, I think it's going to be underneath that, but it's unclear. Let's see here. Does this apply to people on adjustment of status with AP and EAD? If you're trying to re-enter on AP, technically you're being paroled in and not necessarily being entered on an H-1B. It's when you're trying to come back on an H-1B, it seems that this proclamation is focusing on. Does it apply to capless H-1B too, like university employees? Guys, it says H-1B generally. The references that they're making here is H-1B, that H-1B cap exempt falls under H-1B. Does this impact TN visa holders? The conversation is about H-1B. The proclamation is about H-1B. I don't necessarily think this is going to be impactful for TN visa holders. What about OPT and STEM OPTs? OPT and STEM OPT is not under H-1B, but guys, there's been a lot of discussion about changes to the F1 program. I really think that for many of you, you guys need to be really considering what are your alternatives, what are other visas that you can walk into that may try to avoid some of these H-1B changes that are happening in real time. Is the executive order applicable to people already working in the United States? The executive order seems to be targeting people who are traveling, guys. If you're already here in the United States, the question is not has to do with you staying. It's about entry. Look at the title for the proclamation: restriction on entry of certain non-immigrants. So that's something that I want you to keep in mind. So I think what's going to happen here is that if you're already working in the United States and you're staying in the United States, it doesn't seem to have that particular impact. It's when you're trying to come in after the 21st or on the 21st that these things seem to be having an impact. All right. All right. So guys, you guys should really be considering H-1B alternatives at the moment. Are you guys going to be qualified for an O1? Can you quickly become qualified for an O1? Can you build into the right direction and develop in the right direction? Are there other alternatives like a J1 research scholar, a J1 specialist program that you can get into? Guys, research scholars are also for private entities. They're not only for public institutions. I really am genuinely telling a lot of you that with everything that's happening on the H-1B right now, considering your alternative plans, your plan Bs, your plan Cs is going to be all-time high important. For those of you who are considering travel, those alternatives are going to be much more meaningful. And also, like, when you're thinking about renewals and stampings and all of these entry stuff, you guys all know that there's so many changes to how many interview appointments are going to be taken up. They've just said, like, hey, we're not going to be doing drop-offs appointments. Hey, we need everybody who is below the age of 14 and above the age of 75 to still go to appointments, right? So even then, visa stamping is not going to be an easy process either, along with the entries. Let's see here. My stamping is already done. I'm in the US, has in fact already done stamping too. Soraya, essentially what the proclamation is saying is that if you try to re-enter after or on September 21st onwards, you will need to provide proof that your company has paid that $100,000 payment, even if you already have the stamping done. That's how I'm doing it. Do you expect strong lobbying to oppose this, or are big tech going to throw money at the government? I'm curious. I'm genuinely curious. I don't know if big tech would be willing to pay $100,000 per applicant. I think what's going to naturally happen is people are going to be pivoting to other visas, or these companies have to be considering other visas. Honestly, for companies who are watching this, anybody in global mobility or HR, or even those of you who are well connected into HR, companies need to start talking to the immigration attorneys and immigration partner firms to figure out alternative programs, right? A good firm is going to be able to establish a quick plan B, even for the most precarious of circumstances. Is it that you're going to pivot everyone to J1s, to F1s and the like? What can a company do to support their individuals? They need to talk to their immigration partners immediately. The one thing that I would like to say is that a creative immigration partner is going to give you some of those much more novel solutions that maybe you've never heard of. Well, time to marry U.S. citizen. Nicole, are you single? I mean, the reality is that I'm married. Sorry, y'all, but thank you for the question. If I go for a month outside the U.S., will that pose a problem for H-1B? I mean, guys, the proclamation is on the entry after the 21st, or on the 21st and after. When you try to enter, according to this proclamation, you will need to provide proof that that $100,000 payment was made. Okay, it's $100,000 now. How much was it before annually? There wasn't an annual fee of even close to $100,000. Is every time you renew, you'd have to pay a few $1,000s, not more, to get that renewal and that extension done. There wasn't really a fee for you to come in per se. Of course, there's the MRV fee where you paid a fee to the U.S. government to book your appointment and get your stamping done, but this is different. Yeah, incentivized TN, no fee, less administrative room. Yeah, path diversion, thank you for the comment. Essentially, a lot of people are going to be pivoting to other visas. Hey, are you Australian? Going to the E3, right? Or hey, if you are Mexican or Canadian, stay with the TN. Don't even really contemplate the H-1B too much. It's a really strong disincentivization of the H-1B program at the moment. Thanks for your live session. How about job changes with the USA applying new H-1B with new company? Actually, that's actually a curious part, because even though the restriction mentions like the entry, it seems that the payments are triggered during the filing. So what I'm really most curious about is this going to be an optional payment if it's going to be a domestic filing? Who knows? I think we need to wait for USCIS's instructions to know, right? But it seems that where things get really difficult is when you're traveling, when you're trying to exit and come in. Does this apply if we filed someone's H-1B? So the LCA may not necessarily be enough, I think is what you guys are mentioning. I think it's going to be the filing of the H-1B. Is it the new H-1B 2026 or current H-1Bs working in the US? Let's see here. One second. Is it the new H-1B 2028? I think it's going to be sooner than you think. The proclamation cites September 21st. I'm going to double check that again because I feel like, as I'm trying to read this in real time, maybe my eyes crossed out really very quickly. Yeah, it says here, restriction shall expire absent an extension 12 months after the effective date of this proclamation, which shall be, guys, 12:01 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time on September 21st, 2025. That is what the proclamation says at the moment, right? Let's see here. Wait, this is $100,000 is to be paid annually. I don't know if it's going to be paid annually, guys, right? It says here to prevent issues, prove that I have an employment certificate prior to October 1st. Okay. Shall restrict decisions on petitions not accompanied by under discussion who are currently outside the U.S. for 12 months. I think this is an interesting statement. I'm going to say it. I'm going to read it out loud. The Secretary of Homeland Security shall restrict decisions on petitions not accompanied by a $100,000 payment for H-1B specialty occupation workers under Section 101A15 H-1B IB of the INA who are currently outside the United States for 12 months following the effective date of this proclamation as set forth in subsection A of this section. The Secretary of State shall also issue guidance as necessary and to the extent permitted by law to prevent misuse of B1 or B visas by alien beneficiaries of approved H-1B petitions that have an employment start date beginning prior to October 1st of 2026. That is an interesting statement here. Let's see here. If an H-1B stays put here, not travel, wait until my green card is supposed to issue, won't affect them. Honestly, if you're here in the United States on H-1B, I would not be traveling. I would not be traveling based on the context of this particular proclamation. They said it goes into effect on the 21st. I bet IT companies will try to relocate their critical employees to near stuff. I do think that a lot of people may be considering relocating their offices to other countries nearby or in other countries in similar time zones. I can see that being the impact. However, like I mentioned, for those companies, you guys need to be talking to your immigration counsel immediately. You need to be talking to your immigration partners, HR companies, or even people, professionals. If you work very tightly with your HR departments, the first thing that you need to do is say, hey, can I talk to the immigration partners, or can you guys talk to your immigration partners to figure out what the alternatives are or what actions my company needs to do to best mitigate the circumstances? Is this a proclamation or an executive order? What is the difference? I mean, the reality is that this is a proclamation. A proclamation is usually a directive. Let's see here. It's them ordering someone else to do something. Yes, it's annual, but as I said, this also applies for everyone who's already here. I mean, honestly, Sanath, I think the way that I'm thinking about it is that it applies in the sense that where they check is based on your entry to the United States. It's still, again, unclear. Is this going to be a fee that needs to be paid every single time that somebody applies? And how does that work for someone who's not even going to be traveling? And why is it that the first half of the entire discussion here has to do with the entry into the United States, guys? They said it's going to be every year for 6 years. Okay, let's see here. Rule applies for 12 months, can waive cases in national interest. I'm wondering if this is going to be, do you guys remember during COVID when there was the national interest exceptions? Like everybody was like generating letters for that saying that whatever it is that they're doing and why they need to come to the United States is because of national interest exceptions. I'm wondering if they're going to be doing the same thing on a DOS level or if they're going to be doing this on a DHS level as well. If we need to be able to argue that whatever it is that you're doing or whatever your company is doing is of national interest. And I wonder to what extent it's going to be expanded upon. Is it that you're working for critical infrastructure sectors or AI? I'm really, really curious. Let's see here. Employers must document payments. State Department verifies before visa issuance. DHS and state coordinate to block unpaid cases. One thing that I really want to emphasize to everyone that everyone is missing is how the Labor Department is going to be raising the prevailing wages. Remember under Trump 1.0, they kind of did this where they shifted the wage levels, I think by 20%, right? So if I have an approved I-797 and have plans to go for visa stamp related, does this? Yes, it does. I'm going to say this again. A lot of the proclamation focuses on people who are traveling. It's saying here that if you try to enter on the 21st onwards, that they will double check to make sure that your company has paid this $100,000 payment. I'm not even sure how retroactively they can even make this payment. I'm curious about that part. Let's see here. Okay. I think what we're trying to do is like real-time analyze this because, you know, whenever you see like these proclamations or executive orders, it's very difficult to parse through every single part of the policy and how they're going to implement this. So give me 1 second. All right. Does renewing an H-1B as a visa as I am already here get affected, right? Again, right, I think a lot of it is focusing on travel. At the same time, it does seem that it's going to be implemented in a renewal process in terms of paying for this H-1B application. Let's see here. So it says right here, non-immigrant workers entering the U.S. under the H-1B whose petitions are not accompanied by a payment of $100,000 are restricted from entry. Yeah, I think the restriction focuses on aliens who are outside the United States seeking the H-1B petition. The restriction does not apply to cases determined by the Secretary of Homeland Security. Guys, I'm reading this in real time. Okay. Let's see here. What about people on OPT applying for H-1B next year? If anything, for those of you who are on OPT right now, you guys need to be considering your Plan Bs and Plan Cs. I cannot tell you if overnight, over the weekend, or in the next weeks or so that this is going to continue happening, or if there's going to be a lawsuit that tries to like break this all down. But the reality is that all you can do right now is see if there's a way for you to avoid relying solely on the H-1B. I think what this has exposed to every single one of us that is watching like right now, or like really seeing this happen in real time, is that you cannot rely on just one visa status. I understand that the H-1B has been a stalwart for many of you who are out there. But the reality is that you need to treat immigration like a stove. You need to have as many pots going for you all at once, and you need to be cooking on that stove for many different aspects. A lot of the language that we noticed in the live stream focused on extraordinary ability, guys. It seems that they're really focusing on individuals who are extraordinary, who have top tier talent and the like. Is it possible that the O1 is not going to be as touched? Maybe. Maybe that's something that you guys need to be focusing on. Or are we focusing on J1 scholars and research scientists and the like? Guys, if you are in STEM, you guys need to be focusing on some of the more extraordinary ability pathways instead. Yes, so for many of you who keep asking about whether or not you're impacted here in the United States, please read the proclamation. I'm going to keep copying and pasting it here just for everybody to review. If someone is having an I-140 approved via NIW for the EB2 categories and currently on H-1B, does this apply? Guys, it applies for people who are on H-1B and for those who are seeking entry to the United States. If you are outside of the country and you are trying to come into the United States at this moment, there will be a check for you to determine if you have paid that $100,000 fee, you being your company in this circumstances. That's what the government is saying starting on the 21st. For any of you who are watching this with family, friends, coworkers, colleagues, best friends, children, and the like, who are on H-1B, who are outside of the country, please come back to the United States before the 21st. Like, you need to just change all of your flights and come back like today, tomorrow. Has the 100K premium is approved from Congress? It's not like, guys, this is a proclamation, right? It's even if like, the reality is that it's possible that this is going to turn into rulemaking instead, where essentially the USCIS and the like and the related agencies would need to submit a proposal to the Federal Register, and it needs a notice and comment period. However, it seems that with the restriction on entry in particular, that's something that can be done through an executive order. Lawsuit. Yeah, I think there should be a lawsuit. Don't people need to re-enter for H-1B stamping? That's if you need an H-1B stamp. If you still have a valid H-1B stamp, you guys can come in. I also want to remind everybody, because this is a common misconception, even if you have a valid H-1B stamp and it is issued by a different employer than your brand new employer, you can still come in. You don't need your H-1B visa stamp to be issued by the same employer as the approval notice that you have, right? I see here, can we hope for a taco over the weekend? I mean, we shall see. I'm wondering if there's going to be some sort of lawsuit or some sort of injunction or some sort of pause here. Sounds like the motivation is to use the fee to get concessions from companies. They'll all want exemptions. Potentially. Like it's, you know, a lot of what the administration seems to be focusing on and a lot of what people are really pushing forward at the moment has to do with maybe you want to bring extraordinary individuals. We want to stamp down the fact that most of these visas are being used by IT consulting companies and the like. It's hard to say, but it seems that the administration is motivated to kind of redefine H-1Bs or maybe to push people into other categories. Need to go out for H1 stamping. What do you need to do? Why do you need H1 stamping? Usually, a lot of the times, if you need H1 stamping, is it because you're trying to activate the H1B for the first time because you didn't opt for a change of status, or is it because you want to travel? Guys, travel right now may be seen as a luxury, right? Stay put in the United States if you want to avoid this fee. It seems to be what the proclamation is saying. How is this different from the COVID time restrictions? The COVID time restrictions didn't have a $100,000 fee. There wasn't a $100,000 fee during the COVID times. If anything, what I was mentioning when it comes to COVID times is I'm curious to see if there's going to be some sort of national interest exception process that may occur here for your ability to come back to the United States, whether it's going to be on the CBP level, at the passport level, or it's going to be at the DOS level, right? Your H1 stamp is expired. Okay, well, don't travel. If you're already in the United States and you're on H-1B status, I think you need to be avoiding travel. Is this fee for new applicants, but also for renewals? I think this fee is for anybody who's interested in traveling, getting a renewal, or a new applicant. It's just H-1Bs in general. H1 stamp expired, need to go out for H1 stamping. Why do you need, okay, so again, I think the question needs to be rolled back to why is it that you need this stamping? Are you trying to get this done because you want to be able to travel, or are you trying to get this done to effectuate it in, or to activate your H-1B for the first time? Guys, remember that your companies can file for H-1B amendments or to file a brand new H-1B change of status. I would rather you guys file a brand new change of status domestically before all this stuff happens. Remember that you can file H-1Bs online, guys, but you might need to go through the LCA process first. A lot of questions coming in. Where should we pay the fee? I think it really depends on how USCIS rolls out. I think what we're trying to do is wait for how USCIS is going to implement all of this. For each and for every something. I think it's going to be for each individual. I think it's going to be for each individual, guys, per applicant. It says per petition here. How will this affect physicians in nonprofits? If you're on H-1B, I don't think the government seems to be differentiating between different types of individuals or different careers or occupations. Again, there are some insinuations when it comes to people who are doing things of national interest. There seems to be some level of exceptions, but it is not clear at this time. Right? When my company attorney applies for a regular renewal of my H-1B I-797 here, does that require them to produce a payment? Let's say there's no travel through this. It's actually unclear on this proclamation because the interesting part that I want to emphasize to both of you is the interactions between USCIS and the Department of State here. A lot of the discussion on this particular proclamation at this moment is the fact that the Department of State controls your ability to get those visa stamps in order to enter the United States. And CBP is kind of somewhat involved here in terms of like the processing of those entries. Separately, on the other side of things is USCIS, who issues those approval notices or those adjudications. I think the place that is the most lack of clarity is how USCIS is going to do all of this. There's a lot of discussion on this proclamation about the Department of State. There's a lot of discussion here about how there is going to be this $100,000 payment for a petition, but I'm not entirely sure in terms of reading this alone, right? If I'm able to answer that question of how it's going to apply to someone who's not even going to be traveling. Is it a required payment to pay this $100,000 if it's all going to be domestic? I work at a bank and 25% of the workforce maintaining the mainframe will be laid off if no controls on this insane order are in place. I mean, listen, a lot of financial institutions also rely on H-1B workers, but those said financial institutions may have a solid backup plan. Guys, for many of you who are on H-1B at the moment, maybe what you guys need to be considering is facilitating potentially a move into an L1. So what does that look like? Maybe you need to work abroad for a year before coming back to the United States. And that is something that people have done. I've seen a lot of big consulting firms do that, where somebody doesn't win the H-1B lottery, they send them to an international office for 1 year before traveling back. But again, I want to say the same advice that I've been giving this entire time. For those of you who are working for companies, you need to be approaching your HR teams, your global mobility teams, and saying, hey guys, can you talk to your immigration partners? What does this mean for me? What are your mitigating plans? What are the risks and everything that are involved, right? Okay. Does this apply to H-1B transfer petitions? I mean, guys, I think a lot of the focus again is that when you apply for an H-1B petition, there is a potential reality where you're going to be asked for a $100,000 payment. And it seems that a lot of it is tied to entry. When you're about to try to come into the United States based on those petitions, they're going to want to see that that $100,000 payment was made. Will this affect already scheduled interviews? I don't know if this is going to be actually done on a consular level. I'm curious on that part. I actually think, again, where it's going to be checked is upon that entry. Likelihood of this getting rolled back. I mean, I would like to think that there's going to be a lot of those white shoe firms working overnight, writing their briefs, writing their lawsuits about it right now. There's a lot of wonderful colleagues in the industry who do a lot of class action lawsuits. And a lot of individuals who are probably working to see if there's like an injunction or something that can be done. I would like to think that that's probably going to happen over this weekend. We're going to know more as each day comes on. I know that a lot of people are spamming, does this apply to an H-1B transfer? Again, I don't know how this is going to be rolled out at the USCIS level, because it's so curious to me that a lot of it is focusing on the restriction on entry, right? So is it that this is going to be an optional fee for someone who maybe is seeking a consular approved H-1B, where instead of marking the boxes for a change of status or a transfer domestically, that you're asking for the government to approve this so that you can go to the consulate to get the stamping done? It's not clear based on this proclamation alone. And a lot of it is directing the DHS secretary to basically say, hey, USCIS, roll this out in some form or way, issue the guidances that are needed to make this lawful in order for it to be presented. H-1B renewal is under process. If you guys are already processing, it's unlikely that a lot of these things are going to be retroactive. The only thing, again, is that restriction on entry. Even if you already have an application in process and it's already been approved, let's say, I will tell you that where it's going to have the most impact is your ability to try to come back into the country post that approval. For many of you, and this is what I've tried to counsel a lot of clients, if you guys won the lottery this particular year and you had OPT or STEM OPT remaining, some people opted to, instead of filing a change of status to H-1B, try to get a consular approved H-1B to preserve their OPT and STEM OPT time. Honestly, now I feel like a lot of those clients are going to regret it if they opted to not do a change of status, because now it's going to seem like you need to file an amendment as quickly as possible in order to make this a domestic change of status filing. Let's see here. Is it risky to travel out of the US now during OPT? I mean, this particular conversation has to do with the breaking H-1B news, but for many of you, what I really want to say is that travel can be considered a luxury. Any unnecessary travel should be something that you would avoid. A lot of the changes that are happening right now that we're talking is on H-1B, but I think all of you have seen that there's going to be widespread changes as well to the F-1. So who knows what's going to be coming next week, tomorrow, the day after tomorrow. Okay, let's see here. I'm going to continue scrolling through the questions. A lot of people are repeating questions, guys. It's very hard to kind of parse out, right? I got my approval this year in the US. Should I not travel back to get my stamping? No, it literally says that the proclamation is going to be in effect on the 21st, guys. So starting on the 21st, they're allegedly going to be checking whether or not you've made that $100,000 payment. If you are here in the United States and you're on an effectuated H-1B status, stay here and do not leave. Does this apply to OPT students? This is not for OPT, guys. This is talking about H-1Bs at the moment. So for OPTs, there's no $100,000 fee. However, what OPT students need to be mindful of is preparing for alternative visa plans that don't rely on the H-1B. That is going to be a critical thing. I want to repeat to you guys that there are alternatives out there to the H-1B. Consider the O1, consider parts of the J1 that are out there. Guys, J1s are not just for interns and trainees. It's not just a 12-month to an 18-month visa timeline. There are such things as J1 research scholar programs that allow you to get a work visa for a 5-year timeline. Okay, let's see here. Guys, I'm going to keep reviewing the proclamation. Give me one second. Is this fee legal? Will it be able to stand in the courts? How will they explain the need for this fee in the courts? I'm curious just as much as you guys are, right? I don't know what mathing needs to be done, what kind of reasoning needs to be done. I think my preliminary expectation is that this was going to be a rulemaking process, but I want to focus on the language that the summary used. A lot of it had directives to USCIS and DHS to say, do as much as you need to in terms of creating guidance that is lawful, right? So I think that that's kind of what I'm kind of piqued in my curious is the implementation of all of this. What if travel is a part of work? Well, I think that's a conversation that you need to have with work at the moment. I think that all these proclamations should kind of change how you balance kind of part of your role. If you're on H-1B right now, I don't think travel is going to be a good idea. Another question is, I have gotten my approval this year in US. Should I not travel back to get my stamping? The reality is that no, I don't think you should be traveling back to do stamping. I think you should be staying in the United States. Guys, the impact of this, to repeat again, is not about the approval notice. It's the restriction on entry for people who are trying to enter the United States on an H-1B, right? On an H-1B, needing to prove that they made this $100,000 payment starting on September 21st. Guys, that's literally, it's like next Monday. Next Monday. And actually, like, one of the things that I noticed on the proclamation is that they're saying that we're going to try to restrict people trying to enter on B1 visas, B1, B2 visas. And I'm wondering if that's the reason is because they know that you can domestically change your status to an H-1B when you come back. How about already approved for 3 years? Again, travel, guys, the restriction is on entry. If you're exiting and you're trying to come back to the United States afterwards, you need to show this $100,000 payment according to this proclamation. I don't care if you've been approved already. I don't care if you've been approved for 3 or 30 years, for all I care. I know it's not 30 years, it's going to be 3 years at the most, right? But the reality is that it's the restriction on entry. You trying to enter the United States at this moment, starting on September 21st, they're going to be checking for this $100,000 payment. Let's see here. Can we transfer from H-1B to O-1? Yes, guys, this is going to be your primary directive for a lot of you. The reality is that you need to be looking for alternatives. What is clear to me is even if with all of the injunctions and all the lawsuits that could be coming in at the moment to try to prevent this, this has exposed a little bit of a vulnerability of the H-1B program, right? This is in many ways a little bit historic. You need to be treating your immigration journey here in the United States like a stovetop. You need to have as many pots going for you. So if you can seek alternative plans or be prepared for those alternative plans, like changing to the O-1, that would be a good idea at this moment, right? So again, friends, family, anybody that you know, if they are outside of this country at this moment, they need to come back before the 21st. It seems that the restriction on entry is going to start beginning on the 21st of September. Literally at midnight, 12:01 Eastern Daylight Time. So don't, you know, if you're flying to SFO, you're flying to LAX and the like, don't think that because you're entering then before this time that it's going to be okay. Remember that New York is 3 hours ahead. Right, let's see here. Do you think this will make priority dates speed up over time if you were to go from H-1B to GC? Maybe, but I think what's really curious is the gold card proclamation, right? The language in the gold card proclamation seems to reference a lot on EB2s. It's talking a lot like about exceptional business ability or things related to national interest. So I'm wondering if that could potentially increase the backlogs because people, yes, they may be paying for these fees, but it's adding to the already existing long queue for the EB2 category. Sorry, guys, I'm going to just take a little bit of a drink. Is there a difference for public institution-sponsored H-1Bs? So if you're talking about cap exempt, I don't know if there's going to be a big difference. According to this proclamation, it's talking about H-1Bs as a whole, and the cap exempt items fall under these H-1B sections that they're referencing on this proclamation. I'm on CPT, so does that mean that if I find a sponsor for H-1B, the company is supposed to pay $100,000 for my filing? So this is the part where a lot of us are confused, and a lot of us are still trying to analyze is how is USCIS going to roll this out? It's very clear that the restriction on entry, like how that's going to work, which is that if you try to enter on the 21st onwards, you need to show that this $100,000 payment is going to be there. But I'm curious for those who are filing a change of status, if you're filing a transfer domestically and there's no travel, if there's going to be an explicit requirement for you to pay this $100,000. Because when this proclamation was released and when it was dropped, when I'm looking at the language, it says that it's going to be imposed at the petition level, but again, the restriction is focusing on entry. My LCA was filed on Wednesday, so can I only file after September 24? Do I need the 100K? Again, the USCIS portion of it seems to be like, hey, not USCIS officers, but hey, Secretary of Homeland Security, right? You need to be supplemented by 100,000. Like, I don't really know how that's going to be rolled out. I'm going to reread this again, right? The entry into the United States of aliens as non-immigrants to perform services in a specialty occupation under the section H-1B is restricted except for those aliens whose petitions are accompanied or supplemented by a payment of $100,000 subject to the exceptions set forth of subject C. The exceptions that were set forth in subject C is that the restrictions imposed shall not apply to any individual aliens or all aliens working for a company or all aliens working in an industry if the Secretary of Homeland Security determines in the Secretary's discretion that the hiring of such aliens to be employed on that specialty occupation is in the national interest and does not pose a threat to the security or welfare of the United States. I'm curious, guys. I think that what's going to probably happen is maybe some guidance on what industries don't need this $100,000 payment. It started to remind me, guys, again, on the national interest exception kind of period of time during COVID, where they were saying like these are the critical infrastructure industries where you can qualify for exception. For example, is it AI? Is it certain parts of tech, digital payment structures, and the like? Keep scrolling down, right? There's a lot of questions coming in. I'm trying my best to answer as many. Do H4 also need to show proof of payment? I'm wondering actually if it's going to be tied to spouses. I think it's very possible that what they're going to be checking is if your primary applicant is allowed to even travel and come back in. Great news for unemployed recent graduates. I don't know if we're going to actually know the impact of how this is going to work here in the United States and for workers. I think one thing that a lot of people know is the future is going to be backed by STEM, right? And does the United States have enough of a domestic STEM pipeline in order to effectuate or really boost up the industry for innovation? We're in an innovation system right now. We're in an innovation economy. Does the United States domestically have enough workers to produce that economy or to support that economy is the real question here. I do think that one of the interests of the government right now is to focus on American training and kind of incentivizing people domestically to move towards STEM. But I personally do think that this could be a little bit more of a long-term play because at the end of the day, it does take time for people to create that interest or to fulfill those roles in STEM. Let's see. I do really appreciate what a lot of the compliments here. I'm really trying my best to give you guys like some real-time insights and feedback. This is all very, very new, right? Let's see here. Does it affect H-1B extension of stay? I want to remind you guys that the statement that was made by the White House at 1 hour and 37 minutes into that live stream focused on extensions of stays, renewals, and first-time applicants. I think what's really interesting is that after that, when they published it, a lot of this has to do with restrictions on entry. So that relationship between, hey, do I need to pay this when I file the extension, if I'm staying in the United States and I'm not even entering, is hard to really describe like how that's going to be rolled out. Why did they make this rule if it only applies to entry? Because that's something that is within the executive authority, right? It's just like, hey, I need you to stop people from entering based on this national security. Think about the travel bans. It is something within the Trump administration's authority to do immediately. I think that's the reason why it's going to be based on this entry portion. Can we file for an H-1B amendment in regards to a location change? It's a material change if you change locations, right? So I do think you need to file an H-1B amendment related to that. What about MS students, medical school students? Depends on if you're there on an H-1B or not. Guys, this is not specific to occupations. This is specific to individuals who are on H-1B. Yes, the government has mentioned that there's going to be some exceptions from individuals or companies within specific industries, but it's unclear. Is it going to be based on CISA, the critical infrastructure industries that are out there? It's not clear. Malika, it says here, is this approved already? It's an order. It's been signed. It says here that it's going to be in effect starting on September 21st. How likely is this going to be challenged by the court? I do think there's going to be some level of challenge. This is a bit groundbreaking. This is something that's very sudden and very significant. $100,000, guys, is a lot of money. And I wonder how the government is going to say that this is going to be a reasonable fee. My expectation when this was all kind of rumors going to be announced, when Bloomberg kind of submitted it, is that there was going to be a rulemaking process. And I'm curious if that rulemaking process is going to exist or occur. Right. So this question of what if I need to file an H-1B amendment, but I have no plan to travel outside the U.S. Again, it's an outstanding question. I am very, very curious to hear how it's going to be applied. At the moment, what I keep reiterating and I keep saying to every single one of you who is sitting there is, one, you need to focus on alternative plans. Maybe you need to change to a different status that doesn't have this $100,000 requirement. Or number two, if you're outside of the country at the moment, friends, family, colleagues, best friends, children, cousins, second brothers, all this kind of thing, brother-in-laws, sisters-in-laws, they need to be coming back to the United States before the 21st. Can someone leave the H-1B visa and work on the 485 GC EAD? Your EAD card gives you the ability to work. Your 485 pending allows you to stay. I'm usually not a fan of abandoning underlying statuses, but your 485 does give you the ability to work. If you have an advanced parole document, that could also give you travel permission, but I do recommend that you speak with an attorney to discuss the risks related to your travel at this moment. Can you talk about H-1 transfer between employers while in the US? All right, yes. So the proclamation doesn't seem to specifically talk about the situations where somebody is already in the country and they're filing a transfer or an amendment and the like, right? The one thing that I will note that the proclamation does says is that this is a charge that's going to be done on a per petition basis by USCIS, which makes me believe that there might be some sort of application fee. Whether it's a requirement or optional is hard to say because it's tied to this whole concept of entry. Right. I think one thing that I will note is that in the live stream that was talking about this, the White House official did say that this was going to apply for first-time applicants, renewals, extensions. Genuinely curious. But at the same time, they also mentioned annual fees. So I'm just kind of like really sitting here and kind of figuring out how is this all going to be implemented when you roll out. Right. Does this still need to be approved in the parliament? Or I guess what you mean is in Congress. Guys, this is an executive order. This is a proclamation. This is something, it's an executive action, right? It says right here that it's going to take into effect on September 21st. Which industries are exempt? Hard to say. Again, like it says that the Secretary of Homeland Security is going to be the one designating it. I'm wondering if in the next few days we're going to see announcements related to what these are. My gut feeling, and guys, this is all anecdotal. This is all based on like my own opinion and my kind of thinkings and having worked in this field for a while, right? My gut is that it's going to go to the industries that are very similar to the CISA industries, the critical infrastructure sectors that were established during the COVID period, right? You're looking at maybe areas of fintech potentially. You're looking at artificial intelligence, additive manufacturing. There's a lot of different areas, but I think we have to see. Right? Is traveling back after the 21st risky? Yes. It doesn't matter cap exempt or not. Traveling after the 21st is risky. It says right here, the way the proclamation is written now, it does not limit someone doing a change of status yet. The way that it is written doesn't seem to be limiting that. I think a lot of the questions is whether or not you have to pay this when you file a petition, because that payment seems to be tied to the petition. I don't know when that payment is going to be triggered. Like I said, that you're entering and you need to bring a briefcase of $100,000 in cash, or is it the proof of the payment? I think that's the part that's really kind of throwing us off the curve. Thank you, Henry. So Henry is the Senior Counsel of Immigration, also with Manifest. Thank you for answering some of the questions in real time here on this particular stage. Let's see here. If someone needs to urgently travel to the home country, should they change a status to consular H-1B and stay on F1? If you're in the United States, file that change of status if possible. If you're already in that status in the H-1B, stay in the United States, do not travel. Right? I do think that the government is curious if people are going to try to circumvent this by going into other easy visa categories like the B1, B2 and the like, and then coming here to change status. I am curious with that. It seems that there's going to be some level of restriction on that, because if you look at the language of the proclamation, they do mention a restriction for B1 entries for individuals. What happens to people working on F1 OPT who get their visa picked next year and have to get their stamping done? Why do you have to get your stamping done? I don't really understand. You don't need to have a visa stamp to effectuate your H-1B status. You can file a domestic change of status on your H-1B when you've been selected on the lottery. Yep. The DOS says to restrict B visas for individuals who have an H-1B approved. Yep, if you're in the United States, you need to pick change of status, right? Any friends, family, guys, I'm so serious right now. Friends, family, best friends, brother-in-laws, sister-in-laws, anybody that you know that is outside of the country who has a valid H-1B stamp and is on H-1B needs to come back right now. Change all your flights. The $1,000 or $2,000 that it will cost for you to change your flights is going to be much less painful than $100,000, that's for sure. If I have a consular H-1B, can I choose not to activate it till my F1 runs out? Yeah. The reality is that we need to focus, guys, on alternatives. The big picture on all of this for every single one of you who is watching at the moment is the vulnerabilities that the H-1B has under this current administration. There seems to be a consistent drive towards some way to disincentivize or eliminate the H-1B. For many of you out there, you guys need to be considering alternatives, whether it's the J1, the O1, or anything of the like, where you don't necessarily have to deal with this $100,000 fee. I want to take a step back because many people have now joined this particular stream for the first time. I need to tell you guys what has happened and why there's all of this hubbub right now, right? The breaking news is that the Trump administration has essentially put forth a proclamation on a restriction on entry for certain non-immigrant individuals, specifically on H-1Bs. A lot of the talk has to do with this $100,000 fee that they're imposing by saying that, hey, if you're trying to enter the United States beginning on September 21st, literally at 12:01 Eastern Daylight Time, right, you would need to prove that this $100,000 payment was made. How it's going to be effectuated in terms of practically speaking, logistically speaking, hard to really say, right? It does not, as written, it does not affect renewals. But I think one of the things that I want to express is that, again, it says on a per petition basis. I'm curious on how they're going to roll out this fee. How do you pay it? When do you pay it? Do you pay it when you file with USCIS? It's not really clear, right? Would changing to travel visa whenever one travels a possibility for this? I mean, they said that B visas are going to be restricted for people who have approved H-1Bs. They know the game. They're going to try to come back on a different visa and try to change domestically potentially. Is the payment annual? It doesn't seem like it. I think it's on a per petition basis. That's what I'm reading here. But Henry, if you can take a look, see if it says right here. The universities and colleges, please do not spam the chat. If you spam the chat with the repeated questions to try to block it, we will put you in timeout. Guys, an I-140 approval doesn't change that. This requirement still hits. Okay, guys. All right. So I know many of you just joined. I want to really remind you that this is all breaking news. What has happened is that the government has announced a gold card visa. And one of the biggest pieces of news is the fact that there is a $100,000 fee that is going to be imposed for individuals that are trying to enter the United States starting on September 21st on H-1B. Right. It is a yearly fee. I saw the live signing. I know that they said that, but they said so many things that kind of contradicted each other during that particular presentation. I'm not saying that they said necessarily anything bad. I think it's more so that there's a lot of statements that were made that are not exactly clarified at the moment based on this particular publication, right? Per year, per employee, that's what Lutnick said. Yeah, that's what he said, but I'm wondering what unwritten work it's going to look like or practically speaking. There's a lot of things that can be said in a presentation, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be the same on paper or how it's actioned. The proclamation text is available to read on the White House website, guys. I'm going to copy and paste it here for you guys for your viewership. I really do believe in sharing all the information. All of you are welcome to try to interpret this. As an attorney, I'm doing my best to interpret this in real time, but I'm talking to all of you at the same time. Let's see here. I work in artificial intelligence industry. When entering the U.S., does that make the exempt from it? We don't know who's going to be exempted from this, guys. It just says here that there are going to be areas of exemption. Essentially, the Secretary of Homeland Security can decide what the exemptions are, whether it's for companies or certain industries. That's yet to be announced at the moment. Someone filling in, does this apply to change of status for F1 OPT within the U.S.? Guys, remove from the conversation the F1, right? A lot of this has to do with the H-1B, but if you're looking to change status to the H-1B, it does not seem that parts of this apply to you. Where it does apply, though, is when you try to leave the country and re-enter the United States after the 21st. So even if you have an effectuated change of status to H-1B, it is possible that you need to show that your petition was paid with this additional $100,000 payment. What about the H-1B extension? Is it for new H-1B petitions only? No, it's not for only new H-1B petitions, guys. For any of you that are trying to enter the United States on the 21st onwards, even if it's an extension and renewal or anything that is already pending and the like, it's going to be very troublesome. What happens to people who have gotten picked in the lotteries and have filed the petition already but still waiting for approval? I don't know if they're going to be able to retroactively add the $100,000 payment, but I think what is clear about this proclamation is that if you try to enter the United States on the 21st onwards, you will seem to need to prove this $100,000 investment. No. All right, so can everybody still hear me? Guys, can everybody hear me? It would be helpful if somebody says that very quickly if they can even hear me. All right, great. All right, thank you. Let's see here. I know Trump tried to make lots of H-1B changes in his first term and they were all blocked by federal judges. I know it's hard to predict, but do you see this going in a similar way? Guys, this is such a big change that I do see lawsuits coming in. I cannot tell you how effective these lawsuits are, because here's the one thing that I did learn about Trump 2.0. They are prepared, right? I think Trump 1.0, what was interesting as being a practitioner at the time is that it felt like a lot of it was, shooting from the hip is what I would call it. It's like they're just, going to throw changes and the like very quickly. But I think what we all saw is that when the Project 2025 information kind of came out, and then the start of the administration happened, a lot of these were rolled out quickly and in many ways in a clever format, right? I think that they were prepared for this. I think a lot of these proclamations and orders are better written than potentially the Trump 1.0 versions that are out there. It's very interesting. I think they're prepared, and I think that it might be harder for some of these injunctions to kind of follow through. Thank you for the confirmations, everyone. Does the company have to pay or the individual? Usually for H-1B fees, it's going to be company-wide. It's going to be company payments that are required. Guys, I want to remind for all of you who are joining this call or joining this webinar at this moment with this really live Q&A, right? This is all brand new news, right? My biggest pieces of advice right now, number one, for anybody who is outside of the country on H-1B with a valid H-1B stamp, any friends, family, best friends, brothers, sisters-in-laws, and the like, children, they need to come back right away. Forget about any vacation plans. Forget about anything that is honestly quite significant unless it's a medical emergency or emergency. Coming back before the 21st is going to be key. Guys, it comes into effect on midnight, 12:01 a.m. on September 21st. That is on Monday, I believe. So come back, guys. Today, tomorrow, on Sunday, you need to come back. Piece of advice number two is do not rely solely on the H-1B. You guys need to be looking at alternatives, O1s, J1s, literally anything in the alphabet soup that makes immigration that is not the H-1B, because this is what we have been exposed to right now, right? What we have been exposed to right now is a great vulnerability. It is very clear to me that the government is looking for ways to disincentivize the usage of the H-1B, and I really think that people need to be considering alternatives. Another key piece of information is that when you guys watch the live stream, and many of you, if you missed it, it's actually available on the White House YouTube channel if you want to revisit some of the comments that were made by the administration. A lot of the focus at this time is on extraordinary ability. They want to bring the best and the brightest of talent to the U.S. If there is a way for you to qualify or pivot into the O1, that seems to be one of the more safer categories at the moment. Is it potentially going to become more competitive? Yes, but it seems to be the alternative at this time, right? Will this 100,000 extend to E3s? That is a curious question. A lot of the references are H-1Bs, but E3s do kind of fall under the same kind of rules. I am curious on how this is going to be impacted. I wonder if it's going to have to be discussed on a treaty level, because Es are based usually on treaties between countries. Let's see here. How fast can this be stayed with a lawsuit? Who knows? Maybe a federal judge over the weekend is going to sign some things. It's hard to say, right? I want to let you guys know that I am the principal immigration attorney of Manifest, and a lot of our work has to do with O1 visas, extraordinary ability visas. We're going to have webinars and courses over the next week or so for a lot of you to be interested in. We're going to be hosting an O1 course for individuals who are trying to qualify as an alternative to the H1B starting in October. So please follow us on our social medias and keep in touch with us, because we're going to be able to do our best to help you point yourself in the right direction to find an alternative that doesn't rely on this H1B. Because even if these things don't come to pass, let's be clear, this is an administration that's going to be in place for the next few years, and a lot of their focus and targeting is going to be impacting the H1B at the moment. Okay, it's going to kick in on Sunday, only tomorrow is safe. Sorry, so let's see here, September 21st. Oh, it is on Sunday. I'm so sorry, guys. You guys need to come back today or tomorrow. That is it, today or tomorrow. I am curious if that's going to be a stay. Sorry, I calculated the days wrong. Guys, if a lawyer was good at math, that would be an interesting lawyer, because a lot of us have to decide between business school and law school, and clearly I decided on law school instead. Let's see here. How does people already on OPT to change of status get affected? I think the effectuation is going to be when you're trying to travel. So that's the reason why I keep on telling people, do not travel post 21st. Do not travel beyond 21st. How about E2 employee visa? If you qualify for an E2 employee visa, then great, that is your alternative. You forgot about tax lawyers. I mean, honestly, tax lawyers, like, maybe they are good at math. Like, maybe some patent lawyers are too, because you need to have like an undergraduate degree in something that's quantitative. Any signs that universities will be exempt? It's hard to say. I think let's focus on the exemptions, guys. It seems that the Department of Homeland Security, through the Secretary of Homeland Security, is allowed to create exceptions to this particular rule. Maybe universities and colleges are going to be one of them. But one thing that has been indicated is that the government is going to put down the hammer on a lot of different public institutions that are out there. So I'm curious if that's going to be enough. But remember that during the previous Trump administration under COVID, they had the national interest exceptions, where they labeled certain critical infrastructure sectors as exceptions to some of the rules that were enacted during COVID. I'm wondering if they're going to be using the same mechanism where they're going to designate certain industries. How about L1B visa to H1B visas? Again, guys, change of statuses is not really what we're focusing on, at least when it comes to this $100,000 fee. It seems that a lot of it has to do with impacting the ability for people to enter the United States unless they have paid this $100,000 fee. 27 hours and 52 minutes left. Yeah, literally, everybody get on a plane. Get on a boat if you have to. Cruise ships, helicopters, private jets. I mean, I don't know much about private jets, but maybe everybody can split the fees, because you just need to get back into the United States sooner rather than later. Teterboro Airport may not be ready for the masses that are coming back in. Let's see here. TN visa. I don't see a significant impact potential on TN visas. A lot of this conversation right now is on H1B. If you're currently on an H1B and you are Canadian and or Mexican, maybe this is the time to consider switching back to a TN instead. I want to make it clear, guys, when I'm talking about national interest exception, I don't necessarily think it's going to be the exact same. I'm just referencing something that happened historically, and I think that it could be a similar framework. This is all speculative at best. Sorry, guys, I'm trying to answer as many questions as possible. They're coming in. I do appreciate some of your patience. Can you please tell me if new people are right? Yeah, I understand. Like, I know that you're posting for 100th time. I'm really trying. There's a lot of people here. There's about 1,000 people that are asking me questions. I'm really trying here. Can you tell if this is for new people arriving back into the United States? Does it apply for a transfer or A to B USA only? This is applying to anybody that is going to come back into the United States after the 21st or on the 21st and after. You need to show that you've made this $100,000 payment. Right? If you are a domestic transfer and you haven't left the United States, it shouldn't necessarily impact you, but do not leave. And if you are outside of the United States, come back immediately. Doctors, again, there's no exceptions for specific industries at the moment. It's just that the government said that they could be, but we don't see any guidances at the moment right now. This is going to be for anybody who is on the H-1B or is looking towards the H-1B. Right? It's not that no one knows anything, SK. What we do know is what is written on this proclamation, right? What we do know is what the government said on those live streams. And what I do know as an immigration attorney is based on experience, right? The reality is that I was working through a lot of this under Trump 1.0. I've been working through this through the Biden administration. I am doing my best to give you what I see is going to be happening, which is better insights than nothing. Yeah, the ticket prices are probably skyrocketed. Yeah, a lot of the airlines are probably going to be, well, I don't know if they're going to necessarily be happy, because I don't think what you guys realize is that if you get turned around, the airlines have to pay those costs. But the reality is that everybody, you need to get on a flight. If there's a private jet that's available to book, try to split the costs with everybody. See if that's going to be possible, guys. You can sell your seat like per seat. I keep scrolling, right? Will my perm process be affected, which is currently in process? You know what's really funny is that if they're going to be raising prevailing wages, I'm wondering if that's going to really impact your ability to get this perm. I will tell you that prevailing wages are something that the perm process does utilize. How much do you need to be paid? What is the minimum wage that needs to be paid for your particular occupation and the role that's going to be proposed for that particular perm? Does this affect approved I-140? Where it affects you is that if you're on an H-1B and you're trying to extend and you're going to try to come back to the United States when you travel, that's kind of be where the biggest impact is gonna have at the moment. Let's see here. Reentry for existing H-1B is also affected. Yeah, come back. Celsius, if you're outside of the country at the moment, you need to come back before the 21st, because if not, according to this proclamation, you need to show a $100,000 payment. Does this affect H-4 visa holders traveling? There's no specific citation here about H-4, but I would only assume that if your H-1B primary visa holder did not have it and they tried to enter the country and you're trying to enter with them, that you will not be allowed to enter. Will this dissuade companies from filing H-1Bs for current students on OPT in the US? Hard to say, right? Is it going to dissuade people, yes or no? Is it going to increase the likelihood of you winning the H-1B lottery? Right? If less companies are going to be competing for the H-1B because of it, maybe it can incentivize certain companies who are willing to pay that $100,000. Let's say you work in a STEM field that it is normal to be paid $300K. Maybe instead of $300K, you're going to be paid $250K, and $50K would be contributing towards that cost of the $100K that they need to pay. I think a lot of metrics are going to be changing for a lot of people in the STEM field in particular. But it's really hard to say if it's going to really dissuade people, but I will say that it seems to be an action of disincentivization at the moment. Guys, I just booked my tickets. It's not necessary. You have to book it on your residence. One trip to book it is anywhere in the U.S. if that costs. Guys, yeah, fly anywhere to the U.S. But just remember, it's 12:01 daylight time, Eastern Daylight Time. That doesn't mean flying in to SFO and LAX is going to make it any easier. The point is that, remember, it's the Eastern Daylight Time is what triggers. Guys, can we please keep it civil here? I am going to be banning users who are going to say some crazy stuff right now. Right. What happens to H-1B petition that is processing at the moment? If it is processing at the moment and it was a change of status, stay put, do not travel. If I am in the middle of changing my status from the H-1B to a green card, am I allowed to leave the country? I think you need to have an advanced parole document. I think re-entering on the H-1B still remains you trying to re-enter on an H-1B, and that's what's being prevented at the moment without the $100,000 payment. Get an advanced parole document. A good attorney will give you the right direction on how to get that. There are ways to get emergency advanced parole at the moment, so let's start with that. Guys, yeah, it is true. It is getting very tiring to try to answer all these questions. I'm going to do my best. I do appreciate any positive comments right now. Let's see here. Could they escalate this order to the extent Lutnick mentioned, or will that need further orders to be signed? I mean, you know, the extent that Lutnick was mentioning, I think could be encompassed in the proclamation, because I think a lot of the flexibility will come on the guidances that are going to be issued by the relevant agencies. That's what it seems like. So Rocking Hari made a good point. This rule doesn't impact existing H-1B applicants within the U.S. If they plan to travel outside the U.S. or return, then we need proof of the $100,000 payment. Yeah, as the proclamation is written, that's what it seems like. Doing great. 40 articles by foreign worker months. Thank you. Yeah, I mean, honestly, I am doing my best right now to give you guys the real-time insights. I am doing my best right now to answer as many questions. I know a lot of you are very worried. I want to reiterate my tips right now. Number one is that for anybody who is outside of the country who has a valid H-1B stamp and is on H-1B, you need to come back now. Book a flight anywhere to the United States. You just need to enter before 12:01 Eastern Daylight Time, September 21st. The second tip that I want to give to a lot of you guys is that for anybody who is currently on the H-1B or was considering the H-1B or considering those on a lottery visa, or on this particular lottery visa, you need to be considering your alternatives. O1s, J1s, hell, even F1s at the moment. Anything that doesn't need to require this $100,000 fee, you need to be prepared for, right? At the end of the day, our firm Manifest, what we pride ourselves in is building your future in the United States. And that also includes putting you in the right direction. What does that look like? Could it be an O1? Is it that you already qualify? You will never know unless you try. I think a lot of you should be kind of trying to reach out to us, see if you qualify for any of these alternatives, or at least preparing for these alternatives. Because even if this doesn't come to pass immediately, even if there's going to be a slight delay or an injunction, what this has exposed is the intention of the government to try to disincentivize to some degree the H-1B or change how the H-1B moves forward. The reality is that that also means that you need to be prepared for what those changes look like or the approach that the government is taking. We are based nationally. We have attorneys all over the nation, guys, that are prepared to talk to you guys. So please, if you guys are interested in having a conversation and figuring out what those alternatives look like, please reach out to us. We do offer free consultations. We also, for certain applicants and certain qualified individuals, we do also provide discounted consults for certain applicants as well. We are also going to be hosting a lot of webinars and a lot of series in the next week or so for individuals who are interested in looking at those alternatives or getting real-time updates related to this particular groundbreaking news. Right. Let's see here. Is this effective tomorrow? Will it be effective after votings? This is effective according to this proclamation on 12:01 Eastern Daylight Time on September 21st. That's on Sunday. Is your personal opinion, what are the chances of this getting struck by Congress or federal court? I think that there's going to be a lot of litigation. That's the gut feeling that I have at the moment. So listen, guys, I'm going to say this again, because this is like a really big thing, right? Anybody who is outside of the country who has a valid H-1B visa stamp that can come back on their H-1B, you need to come back before September 21st. 12:01 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time. If you have a brother, a sister, a best friend, they need to book their flights now and come back immediately. The proclamation applies to individuals who are coming in on 12:01 a.m. of September 21st. Please come back right now. Right? This is very, very important for many of you. HR teams, anybody who's in HR, call all of your colleagues, your workers, your staff. If they need to be here for an urgent project, they need to come back immediately. Do you guys also work on other visas and perm stuff? Yeah, we work on the whole gamut, guys. Immigration is the name of our game, right? The reality is that we do a lot of advising, not only from a company level, but on a personal and individual level. What we are known for is building your futures here in America, whether it's you as a person or whether you are a company trying to support its staff. Do you think they will target E3s too? It's possible. Guys, remember that the same framework applies for E3s. The only thing is that E3s are based on a treaty. Maybe the Australian government has something to say about it. How does it affect people in F1 OPT who will be filing or for the H-1B in the future? I think it should be giving you second thoughts about only restricting yourself to the H-1B. You should be considering any alternatives or building yourself towards an alternative. Guys, the O1, it's out there. It's possible, right? I am a person who believes that every single person has the ability to become extraordinary or has extraordinary talent in them. It's about making sure that you invest your time in the right direction and unearthing what makes you so different. The one thing that was made abundantly clear during the White House presentation is that what they're trying to reward are the highest in skill of talent and those of extraordinary ability that can contribute to the United States. They're also rewarding individuals who are going to be generating jobs. At the end of the day, there is some level of recognition that STEM is our future here in the US. We are an innovation economy. We will continue to be an innovation economy. So who are they going to be rewarding? Individuals of extraordinary ability. Well, no. Okay. So when I see here, so the proclamation said that this does not apply to the national interest. It's the exception is for industries and individuals, it says, that have been designated by the Secretary of Homeland Security to be of national interest. I don't necessarily think that means that if you have an approved EB-2NIW that all of a sudden that you're exempted. We need to wait until the Secretary of Homeland Security actually says what those exceptions are going to look like. let's see here. Sorry, guys, there might be some background noise. It says, what if someone is on H-1B already and still outside the U.S., will you come back? Come back. If you're already on H-1B and you're still outside of the U.S., you need to come back. Guys, would you rather pay $100,000 or $2,000 tickets for a one-way ticket back to the United States or changing your flights? I think everybody wants to pay $2,000 instead. Hell, even a private jet might be even cheaper. It's like maybe like 20 or 30 grand. So just to let you guys know, Henry is another attorney at this firm. He's helping me answer some questions in real time because there's so many of you here. I, again, want to let anybody know who had just joined the stream what the big news is that there is a $100,000 fee that is going to be imposed to individuals who are going to be entering the United States starting on September 21st onwards. That imposition is going to be based upon the fact that they need to prove that this $100,000 fee was paid for as part of an H-1B petition. How will this affect doctors on H-1B? If you're on H-1B and you're traveling and you're trying to enter on the 21st moving forward, you will need to show that this $100,000 payment was made. I'm curious about the current criteria for STEM PhD for 01. For those of you who are interested in 01, for those of you who are interested in looking at other alternative visas, guys, you need to get a consultation with an immigration attorney for sure. Of course, Manifest Law, we're here available and open. We have a lot of attorneys. We have a large national network of attorneys that can speak with you. We are offering free consultations for qualified individuals in order to speak with us to talk about this kind of scenario. We're also offering some discounted rates. The reality for many of you guys is that you need to be considering these alternatives. So for those of you on OPT, those of you on H-1B, those of you who are worried about this kind of scenario, you need to be considering the O1, other pathways like the J1, and maybe even going back into F1s. Is the interpretation of impacting existing H-1B correct? Again, it's not necessarily about existing H-1Bs. It's really more about people trying to enter the United States post September 21st. You could have an existing H-1B approved, but you're trying to enter on 21st onwards. And the language of this criterion seems to really be saying that you need to show proof of that $100,000 payment to re-enter. Based on the text, renewals are not decided yet. I mean, listen, like I'm looking at the sentences here. The way that it's written, I think is up for interpretation, that's for sure. But it seems that the interpretation is that, hey, starting on the 21st, we want you to show this $100,000 payment. My prevailing wage is completing awaiting perm results. Will this be affected? I think it may be okay. I will say that the prevailing wage stuff is not being discussed pretty openly, but I think it's very similar to Trump 1.0. The White House video, he mentions renewals also. Yeah, he does. I think it's 1 hour, 37 minutes in or 38 minutes in. I think letting it talk about it. I'm on OPT and will apply for lottery. Hey, please, guys, please not spam the channel. We will put you in timeout if you keep spamming the channel for the same questions, right? I'm on OPT and will apply for the H-1B lottery next March. I'm still subject to the fee if I don't travel abroad. From the way that this is written, it doesn't seem that it's going to impact you in terms of having to pay that $100,000 fee. But if you do travel abroad, that's where the things seem to be triggering. Okay. Hey guys, we're changing microphones at the moment. I want to make sure that everybody can still hear me. Can anybody still hear me? And let's keep the comments a little bit civil, guys. For those of you who are saying that it's not impacting nonprofit H-1B, can you show me that language? I'm trying to look at it. Because I'm looking at the way that that Section B exception was written. Okay, all right. Can everybody please confirm that they can still hear me? We just changed microphones very quickly. Should upcoming international students in the US be scared for OPT or H-1B transition? Or, okay, yes, thank you. Thank you for the confirmations. All right, should upcoming international students in the US be scared for OPT to H-1B transition, or this doesn't apply to the latter? Listen, the H-1B program may still be there, but I think that if there's any sense for your ability to exit and re-enter the United States is where things are going to get really dicey. The biggest piece of advice I can give to anyone here is that if you haven't approached the H-1B yet, you should also be planning for alternatives. Again, one of the biggest things that I learned from that statement, from that conversation that was live streamed by the White House today discussing this proclamation is that rewarding of individuals in extraordinary ability, right? Like that language is tied to the O1. it's tied to other visas that the government seems to be wanting to reward or focus their mechanisms on. So I would consider looking at alternatives and not relying on just the H-1B, considering everything that's happening. Because I want you guys to also consider that this is not singular. It's not that the administration can't keep issuing more orders that make it more difficult or more inconceivable for the H-1B to exist. It's not that it cannot be litigated. There's usually ways for people to argue that they didn't, follow the APA rules, or that this is considered unreasonable. So I'm curious, because I do think that because this is such a massive change, that it is possible that it's going to be litigated. One of the biggest things that people are considering is a $100,000 fee considered reasonable, yes or no? I know. So Vikas, I see here that you said video context says renewals also, but text does not say existing renewals for people inside the USA. This is confusing. It is. It is. Even for me as an attorney, like, I'm trying to parse this out as quickly as I can for all of you. It is very confusing because the implementation is not superbly clear. The one thing that is clear is that date, guys, September 21st, 12:01 Eastern Daylight Time. Right? It is basically saying that if you're trying to re-enter on the H-1B, you need to show proof that this $100,000 payment. Let's see here. Essentially, graduate enrollment will crash. We'll see, right? Oh, my light went off, but I'm going to keep going. Right, guys, let's see here. I have an existing H-1B that's valid until August 2026. I'm planning to travel to my home country in December 2020. Yeah, don't travel. Don't travel. Do not travel on the H-1B. Do not travel on the H-1B. I will say that as of right now, you trying to re-enter in that December is probably going to incur the requirement that you need to prove that you paid that $100,000 payment. And you being the proverbial you, because I think it's going to be a company required expense. So it says, sorry if I missed, is it recommended that an approved H-1B holder from last year should not travel internationally? Yeah. It says here on the proclamation that starting on September 21st at 12:01 Eastern Daylight Time, that you will need to show that that $100,000 payment was made. Let's see here, guys, taking a little bit of a drink break. I've been talking for a really long time. Thank you everyone for joining. I want to make sure that everybody understands what has happened. So taking one step back, right, what has happened is that the Trump administration has announced both the gold visa card program. You guys can find out more because the government published a website about this, so you can go on their website about that. But the biggest piece of news has to be the impact to H-1Bs. Alongside that proclamation is a proclamation and order regarding the restriction of entry for individuals on the H-1B. So starting on 12:01 Eastern Daylight Time, if you're entering on the H-1B, apparently you need to show that this $100,000 payment was made in order to enter the United States. So again, brothers, sisters, best friends, colleagues, you yourself, if you're outside of the United States, you have a valid H-1B stamp and you are eligible to re-enter the United States on a valid H-1B, you need to come back now on Saturday, today, basically Sunday. You're not really allowed to enter without this $100,000 payment. A lot of the questions that I'm being asked right now is whether or not there's going to be a potential injunction, lawsuit, things like that. It's really, really hard to say. What I will say is that this is such a big change that I would not be surprised if there's going to be a lawsuit related to this, right? I know that a lot of people are really, really asking me, is there going to be a lawsuit? Is there going to be a lawsuit? I would not be surprised if there isn't any litigation. I know many colleagues in the industry who are litigation attorneys. A lot of the buzz is that, hey, we do see some of the big firms going to start putting together briefs, filings, whatever you need to name it. I think the challenges are going to be based on APA. Was there supposed to be notice and comment period, rulemaking, and the like? It's hard to say. Hard to say, right? Will the gold card changes mean that existing applications for EB1 and EB2 green cards be denied? No, that's not what it says. It basically says that the language of the gold card insinuates that it's going to go into the EB2 pipeline. It's just an insinuation. I can't confirm that because they use like a lot of terms like exceptional ability, national interest. But the frank reality is that it doesn't seem to insinuate that there's not going to be any EB1 adjudications or EB2 adjudications, right? Guys, also, if I don't answer your question immediately, please note that Manifest has a help@manifestlaw.com email. Please don't hesitate to send your questions or informations or requests for a consultation. At the end of the day, the best way to present yourself or the best way to protect yourself is to have a game plan. What are my alternatives? Nicole, how does this impact me? If you want a consultation, whether it's with myself or with other attorneys, we have a large network of attorneys out there that are happy to have a conversation with you on how this impacts, right? The reality is that you need to talk to someone because your specific circumstances can lead to really great alternatives out there. Okay, let's see here. H1B says go home. I mean, at the end of the day, right, I really will say that the way that we should be interpreting this is that if there's a vulnerability in the system, which is an over-reliance on the H1B, a lot of you need to be considering the alternatives that are out there. I want to remind you that if you watch that live stream, when they're talking about these proclamations, a lot of it was conversations about rewarding individuals of extraordinary ability, individuals who are generating jobs in the United States. You guys need to be considering alternatives that do reward those things. Is it an O1? Is it potentially you're going to be in a research scholar program? And remember, guys, J1 research scholars are 5-year work visas potentially, or visas to help consult on research projects. And those can be for private institutions, especially if you're in STEM. Right? Will there be a class action lawsuit against this executive order soon? It's hard to say. My expectation is that there's going to be something cooking right now, for sure. Right? I have, my phone is literally buzzing. Immigration attorneys were a small field, right? At the end of the day, I think there's about like 50,000 of us in the United States. We're all in the same group chats. We're all in the same discussions. A lot of those discussions are going to be focusing 100,000% on potential litigation here. Okay, guys, I want to really one step back here. Biggest tips that I need to share with every single one of you: best friends, family, colleagues, anyone that's out there that you know that is on H-1B, that is outside of the United States and has a valid visa stamp to come back to the United States. Come back right now. You need to come back before the 21st. All right. Saya emang bisa sih bahasa Indonesia kalau mau. I see somebody here saying that if I need to speak Indonesian, I can, but you know, it's very hard to talk about some really, really technical details. My Indonesian is pretty okay. All right, so if any of you have loved a lot of my advice, it would be really helpful if you guys can leave a positive feedback or likes on our channel. Another thing that could be extremely helpful would be a really great Google review to say that this conversation today has been extremely helpful for a lot of you. I am really trying to answer a lot of these questions very, very quickly. What if I am in the process of a perm? Sorry, the questions are moving. What if I'm in the process of a perm in order to get a green card? Does that affect this case, right? I think where your impact is not going to really be on the H-1B stuff. It's actually on the prevailing wage item. I don't know what stage you are in the perm, but if they are looking to increase the prevailing wages, that could impact your company's ability to continue that process. The keyword is restriction on entry. Yes, yes. For many of you, you guys, the keyword is restrictions on entry. That's the reason why I keep repeating myself over and over again. If you are outside of the United States, come back before the 21st, right? Can returning people land on Sunday? No, they cannot land on Sunday. You need to land on Saturday. You need to leave now. Guys, boat, plane, private jet, any way that you can. You hop, skip in a country. You guys, you need to take all the connecting flights in the world to come back. Okay, does this rule affect travel for someone on F1 STEM OPT? Not on F1 STEM OPT, but for individuals who are on an H-1B or having an H-1B. That's why you do a 5-star. Thank you, Vikas, right? I'm trying to be as clear as possible. I'm trying to answer questions as quickly as possible. If this proclamation is litigated, can we travel then? Again, if there is a stay on this, if there is an injunction to this, if there is a pause on this, right? The reality is that it's very possible that these proclamations will not go into effect. We won't know unless we know the full context of that injunction. Can courts stop restricting law? Well, essentially, the courts can do certain things. Maybe what I can see a lawsuit being about is whether or not this needed to go through notice and comment period, if there needed to be some level of rulemaking that occurred. Why need to come back if traveling outside the US? That is something that maybe if you're joining a little bit late, I need to emphasize. The reason why you need to come back to the United States is that these things do not go into effect until 12:01 Eastern Daylight Time. So that means if you can come back by Saturday, like tonight or tomorrow, you're in the clear when it comes to this 100K fee thing. Does it affect someone applying for change of status from F2 to H-1B non-cap? It doesn't apply onto the change of status. What it applies to is your ability to travel and to enter the United States. Seeing some Indonesians on the channel. Apa kabar semua? Udah malam sih di Amerika. Does this apply for H-1B amendment and extension as well? Guys, I think the confusing part is that Lutnick in the presentation that occurred today in the live stream mentioned that it does apply for renewals, extensions, and the like. But I want you guys to read the actual proclamation. It focuses a lot on a restriction on entry. Where they're going to be checking for this 100K is you trying to enter the United States on September 21st onwards. Does the employer have to pay? The way that the language is written, it seems that the employer does pay this 100K fee. What are potential options for someone who is about to enter but cannot before September 21st? Look for other alternative visas or come back sooner. I would rather pay $2,000, $3,000, $5,000, hell, $10,000 to change your flight. So basically a travel ban for H-1B, that's what it feels like, right? 100K is a lot of money. You can buy a lot of things with 100K. Would the 100K be required before the visa is issued? Actually, from the way that it's written, I don't even know if this is going to be checked on a CBP level or not. Like, it's kind of curious. It's like, is it that you fly in and the officer who's on the computer that's trying to let you in on passport control is going to be the one to kind of figure out if you have this payment or not? It seems to be a really key kind of relationship between DOS right now, Department of State that runs the consulates, and USCIS. Are H4 EADs impacted? Not the EAD parts. Right? The proclamation says employer needs to pay 100K to get any ongoing H-1B approved. I don't think that's what the proclamation says. Is it applicable for nonprofit organizations? It seems to be. They're citing to the entirety of the H-1B at the moment. There is references to exceptions. I'm curious about what these exceptions are going to look like. I think we're going to find out in the coming days what these exceptions are going to apply to. Thank you, Henry. Hi, Nicole. Is domestic traveling risky? I don't think domestic traveling is going to be risky. What's going to be risky is you leaving the country. I'm going to give you a very key example. If you're on a boat from Miami, try not to touch international waters and come back. Don't even go on water. I think you should just stay in the United States, period. Right? The question of domestic travel is very interesting, even on cruise ships. So just stay in the U.S. Can courts stop this before the 21st? Potentially. You can find a federal judge who's like awake right now, who's getting presented some really key documents. What about change of status from OPT to H-1B? Let's see here. The change of status, again, I think we're focusing a lot on like change of status as transfers. A lot of the impact focuses a lot on the restriction on entry, guys. Right? So it's not necessarily whether or not you have a change of status effectuated, it's your ability to enter the United States without that $100,000 payment. What is a national interest waiver? EB2 NAW, it's a way to get a green card. You get to skip the labor certification process if you are someone that is working towards an endeavor that's of national interest to the United States. So this solely affects entry and not COS if it's effectuated in the US. That's what it seems like, according to the proclamation. I think the part that we're a little bit on the gray area of, and we're not sure how it's going to be done, is when you file for this change of status, are they asking for that 100K fee then? Right? Because the way that the proclamation is written is that they're saying that, hey, you can't enter the United States post 21st, or sorry, on the 21st onwards, unless you show proof of that $100,000 payment. But does it mean that that $100,000 payment is going to be required when you file for the extension or those approvals that you are seeking? It's curious. My partner is outside the US and is on an H-1B. Do they make yes, come back. You need to tell them to come back. If your partner is outside the United States on an H-1B, they need to come back like now. They need to come back by Saturday. Any flight, business class, first class, suites, you know, I know that it's a lot of money, but that's going to cost less than 100K. I know that for like maybe for Singapore Airlines for those suites, it's going to be like 25K, but that's still cheaper than 100K somehow. I'm going to keep scrolling, guys. There's a lot of questions here, right? I'm going to take one step back for a lot of you who are recently joining. What is the breaking H-1B news? This imposition of a $100,000 fee for petitions. Essentially, what's going to happen is that, according to this proclamation, starting on 12:01 a.m., right, a.m. Eastern Daylight Time. If you're trying to enter the United States on an H-1B, they're saying that you need to show proof of this $100,000 payment. That is the big news. There's also, of course, discussions on the gold card, on this gold card visa, but the reality is that it's hard to say how this is all going to be effectuated. Okay, let's see here. Partner on H4 EAD, they're entering the US, risk of paying this fees. There's not really a discussion on H4s. The discussion seems to be on H1Bs. I would still recommend for people to come in though. Like, I'm gonna give everybody like a gentle reminder. During Trump 1.0, if you guys all recall the sudden dropping of the visa bans, the biggest issue with that sudden dropping is that it seemed that CBP wasn't really prepared. I was getting a ton of phone calls from individuals who were showing up to the airport saying that I can't enter the country, even if they were a permanent resident. I'm not saying that that's going to impact you, but the funny thing is that the interpretation of the guidances on that proclamation and that executive order was not clear. If you were, let's say, someone who is a citizen of Iran, but you have a green card, does that mean that you were banned from the country? So what I'm trying to really say, taking from that storyline, is that it's hard to say if you're going to be able to enter or not, even if the proclamation doesn't talk about H-4s. It's possible that in having such a quick rollout from so many different agencies that are stakeholders in all of this, that there could be trouble with entering the country even if it's on H-4 and it's not specifically a reference on this proclamation. Let's see here. What about people already in the US on H-1B and traveling internationally in December? Guys, this proclamation starts on Sunday according to this, right? That means if you're traveling on December, you're still impacted. It's not like I'm trying to tell you that only on September 21st is this going to be impacted. It's everything onwards from September 21st. Do not leave the country, guys. Do not leave the country until all of this is sorted out. This is also new, brand new breaking news. Trying to interpret a lot of this guidance is in real time. Do you need to pay $100K for a renewal after a 3-year H-1B period? According to Lutnick's statements, it seems like so, but I don't think we have a clear picture on how this is actually going to be practically rolled out. So I'm going to repeat to everybody what we do know, right? What we do know is that on September 21st moving forward, they are going to say that for people entering on an H-1B, you need to show or prove that this $100K payment was made. Right? Separately, there are statements that are made on this proclamation that basically say that this $100,000 payment is on a per petition basis. But where the conversation is kind of a little bit confusing is if I am domestically in the United States and I'm filing a change of status, do I need to pay this $100K fee or is this optional if it's only to help me travel? It's hard to say. It's hard to say. Please read the language of the proclamation. We're also interpreting this in real time. I think we won't really know the full picture until the guidance come out. It's also very possible that these injunctions and lawsuits are going to happen over this weekend, right? Let's see here. What about people who have an NIW? I think this is a separate conversation topic, right? I don't think having an NIW or not having an NIW is really going to change anything. What's going to have an impact on is focusing 100% on your H-1B status, right? Is it that you're going to be allowed to enter post September 21st? You need to show that payment. I think I ran out of battery. Let's see here. Our current H-1B holders affected. Where you're affected is your ability to travel starting on Sunday. How long will this last? The proclamation says it's 12 months. Can this proclamation be challenged or reversed? It can be challenged. I think that there are ways to challenge this. I'm going to tell you all that I am not a litigation attorney. I'm not an administrative attorney, but I do know one thing is that usually when there's big changes like this, there's going to be a contention on whether or not this was appropriately, quote unquote, done. Whether or not there should have been some sort of proposal that was published in the Federal Register with notice and comment period. Considering that this is a massive $100K fee, I'm curious to see what those challenges are going to look like. Right. The one thing I will say is that Trump 2.0 moves very different from Trump 1.0. I think that this was very much planned. I think that there's a lot of preparation here, so I'm curious to see how it rolls out. Can we ask our company to sponsor or apply for O1, or they only sponsor H-1B visas, right? You can ask your company to sponsor O1s. Right. I want to tell you that Manifest is rolling out some literature on this fashion. Like we're going to be giving some people some resources on how to ask their companies or talk to their companies about O1s. This is the time to be really building towards another direction. This is a time where you need to be considering your alternatives. Talking to an immigration attorney right now is going to be so much value, considering the weaknesses that we just exposed today. I don't think a lot of attorneys saw this happening to the scale that it's going to be happening and how sudden it was going to be. Even when we first got the news from Bloomberg about this fact sheet, I don't think a lot of us knew that it was going to be a proclamation that goes into effect on Sunday. I think a lot of us were expecting notice and comment period, that's going to be a little bit of lead time. But guys, I think this is a sudden change. I want to remind all of you that what Manifest is about is building your future in the United States. We have a large network of attorneys nationally. A lot of our work has to do with developing creative solutions, making compelling narratives, and really arguing to the government why you are extraordinary. You need to be considering your alternatives, O1s, J1s, anything that kind of doesn't rely on the H-1B. Because the one thing that I will say about this news is the fact that you need to be prepared for anything that happens. Even if this gets rolled back, what this has shown is that the administration's push has been in changing what immigration looks like. They do recognize in their perspective an over-reliance on the H-1B, and they are looking for ways to reward individuals' extraordinary ability. Try to focus on developing your credibility. You need to show what makes you the best and what makes you stand out, and you need to invest your time on those. Manifest will be doing a lot of webinars, a lot of series on this, and we do have a lot of things. Is it applicable for extensions? I want to focus on the fact that it's not necessarily an extension or a change of status that is impacted. What is impacted is your ability to enter post or on September 21st moving forward. Although I am curious about how they're going to implement this on a USCIS basis. Right? The same impact for who already have an H-1B and need to get restamping. Yeah, again, like the restamping thing, right? You don't need to actually have a stamp. You can stay in the United States. You really only need a stamp if you're traveling, if you need to exit and re-enter, because the stamping only controls your ability to enter the United States, guys. That's the part where I'm trying to tell you that right now traveling is a luxury. It is better to stay in the United States. Okay, guys, like I want to keep it civil right now. So anybody who says anything that is derogatory, we will be banning you from this particular chat, right? Is it important to get a visa, at least one, in the case where we are performing a 3-year extension? You're not necessarily required, or already 3-year. Let's see here. Does this impact doctors who are exempt from the cap? Guys, the H-1B doesn't even show any exemptions or anything like that at the moment. They're referencing H-1B as a whole, and cap exempt falls under those regulations. Let's see here. Guys, we also have an article that will give you guys a general overview. Please take a look at that article on our website. We do provide like a really good summary, in my point of view, of everything that's happened and how it impacts. So sad seeing people cheering this unfortunate change on Twitter. You know, at the end of the day, I think a lot of people have a lot of opinions. I think that this is all kind of real-time kind of reactions. I think we need to see to what extent the government's kind of changes is actually going to impact the industry. Can we transfer H1 to F1 STEM OPT if H1B kicks in on October? You can always change your status. You can always change your status to something else. And that's what we're kind of recommending to a lot of people, is consider your alternatives, or at least be prepared for those alternatives. Where does one pay the 100K to enter? It seems that this is going to be rolled out on a USCIS basis. I'm curious about how those payments are going to be made. This will affect Chinese immigrants the most. I think it will affect a lot of different immigrants, right? I don't think that just Chinese nationals are using the H-1B. I think a lot of different foreign nationals are on the H-1B at the moment. Let's see. Hi, Sharon. What is the fastest way to prepare for the O1 visa? What documents do we need? Guys, we're going to be doing a whole webinar. I do recommend that you speak with an attorney to discuss it. I think the best way to prepare for an O1 is to really assess through a questionnaire or a quiz format whether or not you even have some of the categories or can even attempt some of the categories, right? At the end of the day, we have questionnaires available on our website. If you kind of reach out to us, we are happy to send you a quiz to determine how far or close you are when it comes to eligibility and when it comes to talking to an attorney to see if we can guide you in the right direction. We are going to be hosting an O1 course starting on October. So please follow us in our social media to see if we can help you develop into the right direction, because this course is going to focus on how you can try to become qualified, how to strengthen yourself, because even if you only have one category now, you only have 2 categories that can drag you up into a 3rd category where possible. 100K is for one single visa application or a bunch of applications submitted by companies. It seems to be for per petition, Shriram. It seems to be per petition. According to this proclamation, it's going to be a per petition basis. Because if you take a look at how the proclamation is written, it literally says that if you are an H-1B non-immigrant trying to enter the United States, they're checking that 100K. So I don't know how they're going to check it across companies. See, H-1B's petition is approved, but it is effective on October 1st. Will this rule apply? Where the rule applies is on travel, guys. The rule is going to apply starting September 21st. I'm filing my H-1B extension within the US. How do you analyze this situation? Any danger, right? Again, the analysis is your ability to travel and enter the United States. I know that you are filing your H-1B petition within the US. If you're staying in the US, you're not going to be as impacted as individuals who are outside of the United States trying to enter on September 21st onwards. What if the H4 is abroad and H-1B is in the United States? H4 should come back. I think I referenced a story earlier. Usually when these sudden proclamations occur, a lot of the time, some of the agencies are not necessarily the most prepared for effectuating them, or like at least kind of processing some of these changes. So if you have an H4 dependent, I do recommend that they come back as well. Because the proclamation doesn't talk about the H4 in particular. I think what I'm trying to express is very practical guidance, right? In our experience, when you have these sudden changes, a lot of the time, some of the officers that are at the border, some of the officers that are working in passport control are just unsure on how these things apply. So the sooner that you can come back, probably the better. I have an I-140, an approved I-140. Can I extend US with no 100K fee? The biggest source of confusion right now is whether or not this 100K fee is required even in a domestic filing. But what we do know that is required is that you need to show that this 100K fee was paid when you try to enter the country on September 21st onwards. Is this for all countries? Yes. It's for anybody who has an H-1B. I want to really emphasize to all of you that you need to be talking to your HR team. So for anybody who is on an H-1B right now, please push to your HR teams, push to your global mobility individuals. They need to be talking to immigration counsel or their immigration partners to figure out how to mitigate the risks for you, right? If they don't have one, you need to point them in our direction. We're really, really good at establishing backup plans, multinational programs, because if their current immigration counsel doesn't have an answer, that means to me, they're not creative enough. F1 to H-1B inside the US will be impacted. It doesn't seem like it. I think, again, the biggest source of confusion is whether or not this 100K is going to be optional for payment if you're not going to be traveling. Okay, here, I'm trying to process. 1 second. Let's see here. What about H-1B transfers in the USA? Does that get affected? As of right now, it doesn't seem to be impacting domestic transfers. The biggest issue is your ability to travel on the 21st. Again, one of the gray areas that we're trying to interpret right now and we're trying to figure out is this 100K payment going to be required when you file this H-1B application? Right? I know that we've been live for about 2 hours. I'm really trying to power through, guys. It is almost 9 p.m. Eastern time. I'm running on as much fumes as I can right now. All right. Let's see here. I'm currently in India. Does this impact my travel? Yes, you need to come back. You need to come back. You need to be on a plane right now. Get your stuff, get on a plane right now. Red eye flight, whatever the cost is, you need to come back. First class, suites, anything, it's going to be cheaper than a 100K fee. I want to remind everybody, all of this goes into effect when? 12:01 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time on September 21st. That is on Sunday. I know for a lot of you who are outside of the country, that is a really far distance. If you're coming from India, Indonesia, and the like, get on the plane now, right now. Right? This is a very confusing period of time for every single person here. We're trying our best to clarify as much. Will they take credit card for the 100K? We don't even know if they're going to be processing this on CBP. What I do know is that I think it's going to be charged to companies. I don't think your personal credit card is going to work in that regard. And I would love to know who you are if you have a credit card that can take a $100,000 payment. Let's see here. Do you see EAD affected if they travel? The impact is on H-1B, guys. But if you're on a pending adjustment of status at the moment, you need to have an advanced parole document in lieu, perhaps. Are cap exempt H-1B educational? H-1B is exempt. They did not announce any specific exemptions, guys. Essentially, what ended up happening is that what ended up happening is that they did announce that there could be some exceptions, but there's no announcements on exactly what those exceptions are going to be. It says that the Secretary of Homeland Security is going to be determining what those exceptions would look like for certain industries that are of national interest and have no bearing on national security here in the United States. So let's see. Yeah, somebody just handed me a slice of pizza, guys. I'm going to try to eat this in real time while I'm answering questions. Sorry. I know that might not come across professional, but I'm trying to give as many answers as possible. How does this impact F1 students? You know what the impact is? You need to reconsider your reliance only on H-1Bs. You need to be focusing on developing yourself into other areas. I want to remind every single person here that one of the biggest things that I took away as an immigration attorney that was watching that live stream when Trump and Lutnick were talking about some of these things that they're doing right now is that they are focusing on rewarding individuals of extraordinary ability, guys. When you are rewarding individuals of extraordinary ability, what does that mean? O1s, top tier talent, EB1As, and the like. I think that what they're trying to do is maybe funnel individuals into that direction to focus on that mechanism instead. Bringing the best and the brightest to the United States seems to be a somewhat of a goal or a mission. And also the generation of jobs, right? We are in an innovation economy. That innovation economy will rely on the creation of new jobs here in the United States. Your visa appointment is on September 24th. I can't travel now. What should I do? Do the best that you can. Do the best that you can, right? The sooner the better. It is a potential reality that we're going to see injunctions over this weekend. The sooner that you get into the consulate, the better that you get the stamp, because the sooner that you can come back, maybe you can take advantage of a potential stay on this. Right? Does the gold card affect EB1 and EB2? I don't necessarily think so. It could create an additional backlog, maybe. I don't really know, to be exact. The way that the proclamation was written related to the gold card makes a lot of references to the similar language to the EB2 category, so it might be under that. Can you speak to what the process of challenging the proclamation would look like? Absolutely. People can sue. Right? Could there be a class action lawsuit? Could there be a lawsuit that basically says, hey, government, you didn't do this right. You needed to go through an APA process where essentially you needed to publish on the Federal Register a proposal, solicit comments to that particular notice that you were going to be making these changes and significant fee increases before you can even promulgate this. It's known as a rulemaking process. That could be one way to challenge all of this. What does in the Secretary's discretion that the hiring of such aliens is the national interest and does not pose a threat to the security or welfare of the United States? Basically, they're carving out a way for the Secretary of Homeland Security to provide exceptions to this particular rule. Are there certain industries that you need here in the United States sooner rather than later? Let's give an example. If I were in the shoes of the Secretary of Homeland Security, I would be providing exemptions for people who work in the semiconductor industry, right? I think a lot of us know that there's a huge shortfall of workers here in the United States in that particular field. There is a need to bring semiconductor industries domestic to the United States, whether it's for manufacturing, creation, or development, right? That could be one area, but it's hard to say. I think that we're going to find out more as each day goes on. Can I leave the country for my H-1B stamping in November? Again, guys, the timeline starts on September 21st, right? It's not that it's only happening on September. It's going to be happening moving forward. Do not leave the country. Do not leave the country, because when you come back, according to this proclamation, starting on September 21st onwards, they want to see if you've paid that 100K payment, or at least according to this proclamation. I got my H-1B picked this year with an I-797B, right? I got my visa stamped from India, which is valid from the 21st. Does this affect my case? You need to enter the United States and start that H-1B status before the 21st. Let's see here. What does the timeline of such a challenge look like? Honestly, I can see a challenge happening overnight right now. I can see a challenge occurring overnight right now. I would like to think that there's going to be a lot of phone calls to many federal judges in the middle of the night. I think some people are going to be woken up at 1 a.m., 3 a.m., 4 a.m. to get some signatures out. Tech giants already knew about this. I don't know. I don't know if every single tech giant, maybe some of them, right? Maybe some of them. I don't know if every single one of them did. There are a lot of tech giants out there that rely a lot on H-1B workers, and a lot of them rely on the ability to travel. So I'm very much curious. I mean, let's take a look at social media, right? I think a lot of entrepreneurs are talking about this right now, which is like, how am I going to deal with this? Let's see here. What if I get picked up for the H-1B and I want to go back to Pakistan for stamping? Again, I'm going to repeat it. No travel, guys. As long as this proclamation exists and they're going to be moving forward with it, starting on September 21st at 12:01 a.m., this is going to come into effect. If you try to re-enter the United States or enter the United States on an H-1B, they want to see proof of a $100K payment. Should we cancel our plans outside of the country if they happen later next week? Honestly, I don't know about costing. I just want to tell you that you shouldn't travel, right? Maybe you'll find out that there's a stay, but you don't know how long those injections are going to last. You don't know how many challenges are going to be there, if a challenge is actually going to occur. I am telling you guys that travel should be considered a luxury at the moment. Staying in the United States is going to be putting you in the safest position. What if my flight gets delayed getting in? Leave earlier. Leave earlier, guys. Hey guys, let's not go into ad hominem attack. I am going to be banning people who are going to put personal insults in here. If we have a change of status, H-1B approved for October 1st, can we travel in our current visa prior to our H-1B status kicking in? I think you need to talk to an attorney directly. You need to have a consultation because I need to know what you're changing from and what was effectuated and when. And if you have a valid stamp. Does the gold card affect EB1, EB2? I touched upon this earlier. The way that the language is written makes it seem like it's going to be part of the EB2 category because they mention things like exceptional ability, right, which does come under EB2. They reference things about national interest, right? I don't know if it's going to actually add to the backlog or really like accelerate it in any way. What I will say is that EB2 already has a little bit of a wait time, so if there's more ways to get into EB2, it might add to that wait time. Let's see here. So for many of you who are just joining, I said that we're approaching to another 100 or so people joining at the moment. What I really want to say to many of you that are here now is that there's really the biggest change happens to be this H-1B 100K fee, guys. According to the proclamation, how it's going to be impacting people is that when you try to enter the United States, starting on September 21st at 12:01 Eastern Daylight Time, people are going to be asked to show proof that this $100,000 payment was made. Let's see here. Anything related to L1? No, there wasn't really any conversation about L1. L1 seemed to be safe. So if anybody or any one of you qualify alternatively for an L1, come back on an L1. All right, guys. So I'm going to talk about like the potential losses that can occur over this weekend, right? So for many of you who are a little bit concerned about your ability to come back to the United States, one of the things that could be a little bit of a saving grace is that there is a little bit of an expectation within the community of a potential lawsuit or a situation where this proclamation can be stayed. Right? I really think that people should not be panicking immediately, primarily because I really do think that something's going to come out of this, right? And what I mean by something is going to come out of this is that there's a lot of chatter within the immigration community, within the immigration lawyer community, where we do think that there's going to be something out there that's going to stay this proclamation. I remember the panic that started when the birthright citizenship proclamation came out. Guys, there's going to be a way to try to stay this. Can I tell you that there's a guarantee? The answer is no, but what I can tell you is there's going to be a lot of litigation firms that are going to be working overtime between now and honestly like 4 hours from now or so. A lot of junior attorneys drafting, that's for sure. Anything on Conrad 30 waiver. So if you're trying to get a Conrad 30 waiver and you're on H-1B, that means that your H-1B is also impacted as well. Do you think previous national interest criteria like infrastructure AI would still apply? So I think I mentioned this previously. The way that the government is like writing these exceptions rules seem very familiar to me to the NIE or the national interest exceptions that occurred during the COVID pandemic. I don't know if many of you recall that there was a little bit of a ban where people couldn't go to the US consulate to get a visa unless they could adequately prove, right, that there was an exception or a national interest exception for you to get issued that visa to come to the United States. And those national interest exceptions were based on individuals who are in a certain critical infrastructure industry, and the government published like a little bit of a list. I can see that similar mechanism coming into play for the proclamation like this. I think I mentioned as a previous example, if I were in the shoes of the government right now, some of the exceptions should be in like semiconductor, certain parts of artificial intelligence, digital banking infrastructures, and the like. Does the employer need to pay $100K per year for extending the H-1B visa? According to the proclamation, there's going to be a lot of charges, right? And that $100K fee is going to be impacting every time that you're going to be applying for it. When will this H-1B policy come into act? This Sunday at 12:01 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time is when these things are going to come into effect. Please tell something for exempt H-1Bs like university roles. The answer is that those are going to be impacted as well. The exceptions that were laid out does not reference the cap exempt. Cap exempt still falls under the H-1B regulations, guys, and that's what they were referencing in the proclamation. My H-1B extension is in progress. Is this fee applied to my case? My company needs to pay fees to get it approved. I don't think it's going to impact cases that are already pending. Where it's going to impact is, again, your ability to enter the United States on the H-1B starting on September 21st at 12:01 Eastern Daylight Time. There were reports of this being an annual fee. Reuters, does this imply renewals? I think it implies renewals because that was the conversation that Lutnick basically said in the live stream that occurred from the White House. What are the chances of this being overturned? I think there's definitely going to be a lawsuit that's going to stay this. I feel like there's going to be an argument that's going to likely be made that essentially that they needed to do this notice and comment period where essentially they file a proposal at the Federal Register. There should have been some level of notice of this occurring. There should have been a commentary period and the opportunity for the general public to say why this should be in place, why this shouldn't be in place, and the government's responses to those commentary. I think that would be probably the best basis at the moment, but it's hard to say. I want to make it clear I'm not an administrative attorney. I'm not a litigation attorney. The reality is that I'm trying to give you guys my real-time insights based on my experience so far. Right? How hard is it to end OPT and OPT STEM? I mean, there's been conversations about that, but I don't want people to go into panic. I really think what people need to be focusing on is building towards alternatives, right? I want to really emphasize that when I was watching that live stream, what really called out to me is the recurring emphasis on extraordinary ability, O1s, EB1As, national interest. The government wants to reward the top tier talent, the most extraordinary of talent. So if you start focusing on visas that reward that, like the O1, that could give you a little bit of a silver lining or a rope to hang on to. You need to be considering those alternatives. I want to really emphasize that Manifest Law has a network of attorneys that are happy to have a conversation with you on what it looks like to qualify for an O1. And starting in October, we're going to have a series of webinars, seminars, and courses that you can undertake to try to put yourself in the best position for an O1. So let's see here. Hi, let's see here. Can I go back on my F1 visa? My H1B kicks in on the O1. You know, I don't see any commentary here on the F1, but the reality is that if you're trying to come back on the H1B, I don't think that's going to be possible. Not at the moment immediately. I'm hoping for an injunction that stays on it. I am interested in the language that focuses on the disallowance of allowing people to enter on a B1 visa when you have a pending application with USCIS for an H1B. There was a lot of conversation about that. It's actually on the proclamation. So I don't know if it's going to be far-reaching all the way until an F1. But if you have the ability to re-enter on the F1 right now based on your OPT card, you should come back. Does this impact stamped people also? Yes, because it literally says that starting on Sunday, on October 21st, 12:01 Eastern Daylight Time, the government is going to check every single time that you try to enter the United States that you have paid this 100K, or not you, but the proverbial you, the company or the petition that you have had this 100K payment. Just sucks going to TN because you lose a green card option. Yeah, I understand. I know that a lot of people are worried about dual intent versus single intent. But the reality is that at the end of the day, I would rather be having the ability to come to the United States and like try to ride this out and see what other alternative options are there. Guys, we're approaching almost 2.5 hours. I really think that I'm doing my best to answer. Let's see here, Megan. There seems to be some discrepancies between the Oval Office address and the official proclamation. Do you think that in general the address was used to fearmonger? You know, I think what was happening was that these were real-time answers based on questions that some of us could barely hear coming from the press that was standing over there, right? It isn't uncommon to have a little bit of discrepancy of what is written down in the proclamation versus how it is expressed, especially when it's an immigration law, when there's so many competing kind of interests, so many competing different timelines and competing terminology. I think the only thing that we can do is say that the written word is very powerful, and I think the spoken word can actually express maybe on a practical level how that guidance is going to be rolled out. Because remember that the proclamation is not 100% clear. There's still a lot of vague aspects to it, but I do know one thing that is clear, and I'm going to keep screaming it out to the wider public. If you have a brother, a sister, a best friend, a colleague, a child, a parent who is on an H-1B and you are outside of the country, you need to come back now. You need to come back now, right? Ooh, guys, I'm trying my best to keep up, right? Let's see here. How does this affect candidates planning to apply for the H-1B extension filings? Oh, God, I see here. Everything's moving. Does this affect aliens who already have H-1B petitions approved? Does an alien with an approved H-1B traveling abroad for consular processing be affected? Yes. Yes, you are affected. So this is a good question. I'm going to read it out loud one more time. Does this affect aliens who already have an H-1B petition approved? For example, does an alien with an approved H-1B traveling abroad for consular processing be affected? The answer is yes. It does affect those individuals. Because if you try to come back on September 21st onwards, it's going to be a little bit of a mess. You know what's so interesting is that they're starting this proclamation on September 21st, which is actually a little less than 10 days prior to the start of your October 1st, 2025, right? I think what they're trying to do is prevent people from entering the United States who have approved October 1st timelines. That's what it looks like. Because the earliest you can theoretically enter is 10 days prior to 10 days prior to the start of your H-1B. Can I go back on my F1 visa? If your F1 visa is still valid and you have OPT. What about H4s? There's no discussion on H4s in particular, but I would recommend that you consider coming back to the United States if you are on H4, because on a very practical level, I can see a lot of chaos potentially occurring at the CBP level when they're trying to enter individuals because of the confusion of whether or not, if the primary applicant didn't pay, if the spouse is still able to enter, because that is not clear. Can someone go back to their F1 visa? H1B kicks in on October 1st. I would recommend that you speak to an immigration attorney to see if it makes sense for you to come back onto the F1 or to change your status back onto the F1. I am a professor on OPT. If they do a petition for H-1B next time, will I be impacted? Can I do change of status within the US? You can do the change of status within the US. Where you're going to be impacted is your ability to travel. I want to remind everyone what the gray area is whether or not you need to pay this 100K immediately or not. You have ESTA. You can come back on ESTA, but ESTA is a waiver of status. You can't work here. You can't change your status here. There's a lot of impacts there. Does people staying in the US have to pay 100K as well? That's not the case for Manas Gupta here. It doesn't seem that the proclamation is going to impact people who are already staying here in the United States. How does the executive order affect the determination of prevailing wage and LCA, etc.? right? The executive order basically seems to insinuate ordering the labor secretary to increase the prevailing wages. I want to remind everybody that on Trump 1.0, they did shift the wages upwards. I believe it was like by 20 or 25%. So what does this mean for individuals who are seeking perms or even for H-1Bs? Is that employers are going to have to pay higher wages in order to maintain those H-1Bs or to even qualify for them. And from a perm basis, it means a higher minimum wage for that given occupation. Okay. Hello, I had come to Ottawa for my stamping and will receive my passport on Monday. This was for renewal. I will travel in the US on October 5th. Yes, if you're going to be coming back on the H-1B according to this proclamation, you need to be able to come back sooner than that, because if not, if you're trying to come back on September 21st onwards, you're going to need to pay this 100K fee, or this 100K fee needs to have been paid. If any of you are enjoying this particular live and I have been very helpful in trying my best to answer as many questions as possible, we would really appreciate a wonderful positive review on our Google reviews. Manifest really just tries to share as much information. We try to be as transparent as possible with information and our insights. This is definitely breaking news for a lot of you, and we are trying to help as many people as possible. I want to remind everyone that we're going to be doing a series of webinars with more insights and more information starting on Monday. And starting on October, we're going to be launching an O1 course for individuals who are trying to aim to qualify for the O1 or are trying to develop their cases in the right direction. What we are trying to do is facilitate these alternative pathways for individual, or try to give you guys all some level of reassurance or pathways or alternatives that can really help every single one of you. Sorry, guys, if I'm trying to roll my words, I'm trying to answer as many questions as possible. Does it affect H4 as well? As I mentioned previously, I'm going to mention it again. The proclamation doesn't have any specific references to the H4, but what I will say is that what is unclear, and from my experience, is that on a practical level, it's possible that H4s will struggle to enter, because what if your primary applicant, your spouse, did not pay that 100K? It's hard to say. Is it applicable for H-1B extensions who are in the United States? So what we have seen from this proclamation is that it is primarily going to impact people who are trying to re-enter the United States or enter the United States on an H-1B visa starting on September 21st, right? Where things are really unclear to us is when this 100K payment is going to be triggered and how it's going to be paid and when it's going to be paid. Hi, Sunny. So what does this mean? So I'm going to take a step back for many of you who may be joining for the first time. So what exactly happened? The government issued a set of new proclamations related to a $100,000 fee that is going to be imposed for individuals who are on H-1B. And how is that going to be imposed? Essentially starting on September 21st at 12:01 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time, when you try to enter the United States, you will need to provide proof that that payment was made. Will the 100K be returned to your employer or petitioner? That is unclear to me right now. Right? I would really love for all of you guys to help me out. If you can leave a positive Google review for Manifest Law. If you Google Manifest space law, that would be extremely helpful for us. We really do try to share as much knowledge and information as we can. We are trying to grow. We're trying to grow and to help as many immigrants as possible. We're here to really develop and help build your futures here in the United States. Right. Let's see here. Does this apply for nonprofit organizations on H1 too? It seems to be. The exceptions are not clear in terms of whether or not this applies for non-immigrants and the like. Okay. Yeah, over 2 hours of answering as many questions as possible, right? Guys, remember that Manifest Law, we have a national network of attorneys that are open and willing to have a conversation with you. A lot of the times how we can best help you and make you feel reassured and to look at these alternatives is to review every single one of your guys' cases, to review every single one of your guys' backgrounds and figure out what is the alternative, Nicole, what is the plan, how can we best help you? Is the L1A visa impacted? The answer is no, it is not impacted at this time as far as we are aware. The way that the proclamation is written and a lot of the announcements focuses 100% on the H1B. Let's see here. I'm a doctor with a pending I-130. I was planning to come on the H1B. Is a J1 even an option for me? I know that you're on a pending I-130. You need to come to the United States sooner rather than later. Is a J1 even an option for me? I mean, with an approved I-130, that's a good question. You might need to consider an O1. If you're a doctor, maybe you have a few achievements that we can review. Is it possible to enter on the 20th of September? Is that 10 days before the 1st of October? Guys, math is not my strong suit. Anybody who in the chat, can you guys count? Is that 10 days before? You need to come back now. I am currently on OPT visa and my H-1Bs. Well, is that 10 days before the 1st of October? Somebody do the calculation. Does it impact travel for Canada via road? It impacts every travel entering the United States at the moment. Does it affect people on H-1B who are not planning on traveling? I will say that the impact is going to fundamentally be on your ability to travel starting on September 21st. Sana, I understand that you asked that question. I'm trying to make the calculation in real time, but if you keep spamming the chat, I will have to time out you at the moment. Okay. All right, guys, I will say that you should share your email with us if you want to keep updated, because there are going to be a lot of real-time updates related to this. In terms of the exceptions, I see that somebody's asking, okay, 1 second here. Okay, so in terms of exceptions, the government did build in for the Secretary of Homeland Security to provide exceptions when it comes to specific industries or companies. All right, I will tell you guys that the stream is probably going to end at 9:30 at the moment. I'm going to try my best to answer as many questions. Are individuals on O1As impacted by this? The answer is no. The focus on the proclamation is on individuals who are seeking H-1B. Can't F1 to H-1B just simply delay the stamping if they're not planning on traveling? Yeah, but I want to make it clear that when you're saying F1 to H-1B, if you have a change of status and you're in the United States, just stay in the United States. What's the best way to connect with Manifest Law? The best way to connect with Manifest Law is to shoot us an email. Our email address is help, so that's H, E as in Echo, L as in Lee, P as in Peter, at Manifest, so that's M as in Mary, A as in Alpha, N as in Nancy, I as in Igloo, F as in Frank, E as in Echo, S as in Sam, T as in Theta, .com, C-O-M. So that's help@manifestlaw.com. Okay, let's see here. We're also posting a link to reach out to us. We're also posting our email address as well. Please reach out to us. We're happy to contact you and have a conversation. Right, it's help@manifestlaw.com. I have H-1B and I'm returning to US on the 23rd. Am I affected? Yes, according to this proclamation you are. You need to come back sooner. You need to come back before the 21st. Who are the exceptions for this? The government did not list out what the exemptions are. What the government did say is that the Department of Homeland Security, through the Secretary of Homeland Security, are able to establish exceptions to this. What about medical residents and fellows on H-1B? Guys, it's still H-1B. The exemptions are not clear, right? The exemptions are not clear. I didn't see it. Okay. So that being said, is it applicable for 6 years only? Lutnick mentioned that in the conference. He mentioned it, but I don't see any really strong references on the proclamation, guys. Those contradictions can occur. Those differences in statements can definitely occur. I'm going to file my H-1B extension this month. How am I impacted? How you're impacted is your ability to travel thereafter. Again, one of the parts of the guidance is that it's not clear is when they're going to be charging this 100K. Is it a requirement to pay this 100K even if you're filing an extension without travel? Yep, this is really great sparkling water, guys. I mean, who are the exemptions for this? I want to repeat it again. The government has not defined any specific exemptions. They're just saying that the Department of Homeland Security, through the Secretary of Homeland Security, can designate certain industries or companies to be exempted from this rule, but it's hard to say. We're going to be ending the stream in about 5 minutes. I'm going to try again. Is there a difference for those who are already in the US versus those outside? Yes. The ones who are impacted are those who are outside of the United States. You need to try to come back to the United States before September 21st, guys. Right? If I am inside the US and apply for the H-1B for a different company, does this rule apply? It doesn't seem like it according to the proclamation, but again, where is the gray area is when they're going to be charging this 100K. It's unclear to me if it's going to be a mandatory fee for those who are applied domestically, even if they're not traveling. What I do know is that they're not going to allow you to enter the United States without showing this proof of 100K payment. Guys, no travel. I really want to repeat, no travel. Should the ones in the US cancel travel plans abroad? Yes. Yes, 100%, 100%. Nonprofit H-1B is included as well. Yeah, all H-1Bs. There's no exemptions that are specifically listed here. Let's see here. The 100K fee is insane. I mean, I think a lot of legal analysts are basically saying that it's a bit much. And I think that's where some of the injunctions are probably going to come in, is the question of whether there's going to be rulemaking needed for this to impact. What about Canadians and H-1B status not requiring visas for entry working cross-border? Guys, it's not about whether or not you need a visa. It's about whether or not you are entering starting on September 21st moving forward. Even if you don't necessarily need a visa stamp like Canadian nationals do, they're basically saying that upon entry, you need to produce proof of that 100K payment. Canadians who don't need a visa, yeah, that's what I just explained, is that they're basically saying that not all non-immigrants, even if you don't need a visa stamp to enter based on that H-1B, you need to show that 100K payment starting on September 21st. Will this apply to the next lottery? It seems so. But it's not, what I mean by it seems so is that it's not going to apply necessarily to having to have a 100K payment when you apply for the lottery. That's where I say it's definitely a gray area, because a lot of the focus right now is the fact that you're not allowed to enter the United States without proof of that 100K payment. How long will it take for the dust to settle and know what the long-term policy is going to be? Well, you know, I think it really depends. I think a lot of this is going to be clarified in the next week or two. I mean, I already answered this. Who are the exemptions for this, right? And essentially what I really want to express to a lot of people is that they haven't clarified the exemptions. They haven't. They basically said that the Secretary of Homeland Security can designate certain exemptions in order to allow people to enter the country even if they didn't pay that 100K fee. Can you enter the United States on B1, B2 and apply for H-1B from inside? They actually explicitly banned this. They're basically saying that if you have a B1, B2, or you're trying to enter at a B1, B2 and you have an approved H-1B, or it seems like even a pending H-1B, you may not be allowed to enter. Okay, guys, no ad hominem attacks. Let's not kind of like talk about whether or not this is a scam or not a scam, or whether or not this is unjust or just. A lot of this is a lot about facts, guys. What will happen if I don't have proof of payment on arrival? You might be turned around. Is there an expedited removal order? Is there going to be a withdrawal? Are you not going to be allowed to board? Who knows? If anything, like some of the airlines might already be talking about their policies on how do we reverse this? Like as in like, how do we stop people from boarding the plane so that we don't have to pay the fee to return you? Do you think this is also going to impact another visa type like a TN? It doesn't seem like it at the moment. TNs are based on a treaty between the United States and Canada, so I feel like there's going to be a lot of things that would need to change in order for that to be really impacted. Canada and Mexico, sorry, it's USMCA. What about H4? I will tell you that there's no explicit conversation about H4s, but what I will say is that from experience and anecdotal experience, on a very practical level, guys, there's going to be a lot of chaos at the airports when you arrive. So if you're arriving on an H4, I can see a normal officer being confused on whether or not you needed to show if your primary spouse paid this 100K payment. Guys, I think I'm running out of time. I only have about a minute left, right? I'm going to introduce my colleague here who's going to talk to you guys about how to reach out to us, how you can get more updates. The reality is that this is an ongoing news story. We will be providing the latest and greatest in guidance as quickly as we can. We are going to be setting up a webinar. We're going to be setting up another one of these live streams on Monday. So please look it up. At 3 p.m. Eastern on Monday, we're going to be doing a live stream to talk about this and to answer a lot of questions for all of you that may have, and we might have a lot more insights. Guys, let's keep it civil in the chats, right? I know that you guys have a lot of questions, but the reality is that for a lot of you, I know that this seems like a lot to take in. I am very hopeful that over the weekend, there's going to be some sort of action, more guidance at least. Many of you may even qualify for certain exemptions if they decide to announce what those exemptions are, all right? So I really appreciate you guys for being here and watching me talk this entire time, right? The reality is that I'm doing the best that I can in order to answer as many questions as possible. Right? Okay, so thank you guys so much for your time here. I'm going to try to, let me see if I can answer a few more last questions here. Working on F1 OPT advisable to travel outside the United States. The answer is there doesn't seem to be an impact on F1 at the moment. I just will really emphasize that travel is a luxury, right? It is always safer to stay in the United States. It's a much more defensible position, especially for me as an attorney, for a lot of clients. Okay, so I'm going to hand it over to my colleague right now to talk about ways that you can reach out and keep updated. I really want to emphasize really main things. Number one, everybody needs to come back before the 21st. Do not rely on whether or not there's going to actually be an injunction. Number two is that you need to keep apprised and really think about alternatives. Work with an attorney, talk to an attorney, see what you can do to get yourself a backup plan as an alternative to the H-1B. Thanks, everyone. Thank you so much. I know that I've been talking a lot. I might have been slurring my words. I'm going to introduce my wonderful colleague, Shivani, to talk about how you can reach out to us and how you can help us out.
Hi, everyone. Thank you all for joining. I know this is probably an incredibly stressful time as we understand what's happening in a developing story. So I just want to share a couple of things to help you guys make sure that you have all the resources as the story develops. First and foremost, please, if you're interested in keeping up to date about what's happening with this story, fill out our form and we will capture emails. We will make sure that as the story continues to develop over the weekend, we will share updates so you all have up-to-date information. If you know that you're ready to start exploring potential other...
Can you repeat all that? The microphone.
Yes. Sorry. Okay, I will start. Thank you all for joining. We know that this is an incredibly stressful time as we're trying to figure out what's happening in this developing story. I want to share a couple of things to hopefully help make sure that you guys have all of the information or are equipped with exactly what you need as information comes to head. The first thing is, please make sure that you share your email information as more news continues to develop. We will make sure that everyone is updated, including getting registered for our webinar on Monday, which will have all of the updated information that comes out over the weekend. The second is, if you are interested in starting to explore alternative options outside of the H-1B, please reach out to help@manifestlaw.com. We will intake you, make sure we get you paired with an attorney if you qualify, and we will get you started on figuring out other alternatives for you. And finally, if you feel like this webinar was helpful, it is extremely appreciated if you can leave a Google review. This will help make sure that other people know that we're sharing information that's valuable, it's useful, it's accessible. It helps us keep going. So thank you so much. And please stay in touch for any questions or comments or concerns. Thank you.